Floyd was always known. We teased him as the gentle giant. You can never miss him around school.
He was big in stature, and that made a lot of people fearful of him until they spoke with him, and then you seen he was like a big soft teddy bear.
He would always talk about getting your life together, putting God first.
That was my oldest brother. I love him. I'm never going to get my brother back. We need justice.
You ready?
Yeah.
All right, Jesse.
Jeez.
You know what time it is.
Podcast Tuesday! Live from Made to Motivate.
Podcast. Welcome to Made to Motivate Podcast. This is your host, Ryan Weiss. I am joined, as always, by Jesse Young from Sports Illustrated. How are you doing, sir?
Doing pretty good. How are you guys?
I'm doing great. We've got friend of show, Chris the Film Freak Kessinger.
I carried the wood, man. I'm the co-host.
Oh, that's right. You're the Coco now. And we've got a special guest that Jesse invited on the show for us tonight.
Yeah, this is my buddy Derek Seeden. I work with him. Middle school teacher at my building and longtime friend now. So, Seeden, you want to say something?
I'm just glad to be here. Jess asked me about it, and I said, yeah, I'll do this, Jess.
Yeah, happy to have you. So if you've read the live description, we've got a little bit more serious show planned for you tonight. Please share the feed, comment, join in the comments and everything if you would like, and we can join in the conversation with us. So we're just going to get the show started. So some news that people aren't covering is coming out of Massachusetts. In December, a mob of angry protesters have broken into lawful business and looted the property and goods of that business. They destroyed them while wearing masks and costumes to make it look like a different group of people committed this heinous crime. They were angry with how the government had handled a recent difficult situation, and they felt that only resource was to loot and destroy private property in the middle of the night. In February, a different mob of rioters looted and ransacked a local store because the owner supported a government policy the mob didn't like. In March, the mob formed again and tried to take over the local bank. One law enforcement officer was on site and was quickly surrounded by the mob and was attacked with rocks and other blunt objects. The mob continued to grow as rioters took a local emergency notification system and called more rioters to attack and loot the bank, along with its lone law enforcement officer. More law enforcement arrived. As law enforcement took up a defensive position, the rioters attacked them with clubs and sticks. The brave law enforcement officers opted to use lethal force to suppress the violent mob. The mob overwhelmed the law enforcement and took them captive and threatened them with death. The officers were eventually released.
So why is nobody talking about these incidents and the deplorable actions of the mob who had no respect for the rule of law and the rights of property? Didn't these thugs know that they should just follow the system and peacefully protest in order to enact change? These Massachusetts thugs needed to be jailed, and we should stand with the law enforcement officers who bravely defended the laws and rights of the property. Shouldn't we? Well, we are obviously referring to the Boston Tea Party and the Boston Massacre. The mob we proudly call patriots. The law enforcement we called redcoats. And we as a society have historically honored their sacrifice in the fight for freedom and justice. We don't condone rioting or looting, but historically, white people who have engaged in rioting and armed revolt have been lauded as heroes and patriots. Whether it was the Texans at the Alamo, Shays Rebellion, the March of the Paxton Boys, or even the Patriots, as much as it disgusts me to refer to them as that, as the Bundy Ranch and the other wildlife refuge of Oregon. White rioters are received well and justified and rationalized. Non-white rioters are condemned. And yes, these are examples that are exceptions, but the witness of American history shows as much. This comes from a friend of the show, Chris Vasquez, who posted this earlier. I just think that that's pretty powerful.
Very well done.
Yeah, very well written. It holds true to what's going on currently. As we get into this in depth and discuss some of the things at hand, we'll be able to reference that piece in our discussion and in our arguments. I think you really need to go back and listen to that and really take into account what was said and what he used as an example for when you're justifying or going against or defying what currently is happening. So again, like Jesse said, we've got a guest on, Derek Seeden. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself or introduce yourself, who you are, what you do? I mean, obviously within whatever limitations you need, obviously. I know we got to keep things kosher and don't want to get anybody in trouble.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, well, my name is Derek Seeden. I work with Jesse, and he's really a close friend of mine. And he asked me if I would partake in this, and I said, sure. I am 56 years old, not 57. Make sure I am 56, and I'm African American. And a little history on my side, I will give you that my parents are from Grenada, Mississippi. Mississippi, that city is very segregated, even still to today. Did a little research a couple of weeks ago and just to do my family history tree, and found out that my great-great-great-great-grandfather was actually a slave in Maryland, and he was sold to Grenada, Mississippi, and that's where that side of the family comes from. So, during that, I have 9 great aunts and uncles, and I would listen to some of their stories that they would tell me through the years, and really, it's some of the stuff is unbelievable that they went through as far as segregation and how they were treated. So Monday, when I actually saw the video, all that came back to me, and really, I haven't slept probably good in a week because of what I saw. So anyway, that's just a little bit of mine, and I will give you my perspective as I'm asked throughout this podcast.
Absolutely. So, I mean, part of having Derek on is he's a lot more senior than this. He's been through a lot. We really wanted a perspective of someone elder than us that can give us a different point of view on topics at hand. We've talked very openly about a lot of racial issues and things like that. But it's only one perspective, and part of the show is we really want to have other people on to hold us accountable, give a different point of view, and having someone older that can give us, that's been through so much, I think can shed a lot of light on the issues at hand. So the episode, we want to break down in full detail factual information regarding the recent incidents with George Floyd. Obviously, today here in Akron, Ohio, and Cleveland and Columbus, obviously Minneapolis, across the country right now, everyone is looting, rioting, protesting, whatever you want to call it. They're angry, they're upset, they have the right to be. So we're going to start on with what happened. If for some reason you've been living under a rock since Monday and you have no idea the situation at hand, Jesse, do you want to break down the events? It was Monday, it was the 25th that this happened, and kind of discuss in detail what the issue is.
Yeah. So George Floyd was in a store. Somebody called 911 on him for giving a fake $20 bill. He went and sat in his car. Police arrived, pulled him from his car. They said that he resisted arrest, but now we have multiple angles of the video that shows that, I mean, if he did it, he was lightly pulling away. If that, it looked pretty peaceful to me.
Yeah.
At one point, he falls down, and at that point, he's handcuffed behind his back. Officers are laying on his legs and back. Another officer puts his knee down on his neck, and the last officer is holding back civilians around that are, filming, trying to intervene, whatever. So at that point, George then tells him that he can't breathe. He's having trouble breathing, says he can't breathe. He says that he's in pain. Nobody does anything. The cop doesn't get up, doesn't move. It escalates from that point to the point where he's crying, asking for his mother.
He was deceased, by the way.
Yeah.
Which I really think when you think about that, that's...
And eventually passes out. People come to his aid to tell the police, hey, he's unresponsive. One woman claimed to be an EMT and says, I can help him. Let me check his pulse. Calling for all of this action just for him to get up off of his neck, for them to be able to intervene. And the cop does not move. The other cop keeps people behind. After, I believe it was 8 or 9 minutes. I don't have the exact time in front of me, but after 8 or 9 minutes, they finally got up after he had been passed out. They checked his pulse. There was no pulse. They put him on a gurney, and he later died.
Which was odd. They rushed him on a gurney before actual EMT or anybody got there. But a couple of points Jesse made that I want to reiterate. Initially, there was talk going around that he resisted arrest. He was difficult. He was kicking and stuff. And I initially had saw these, and I went on a search, YouTube and Google and everything, trying to find any videos I could possibly find of the arrest. Officers are supposed to have body cam footage. There was security footage from the store that he was parked in front of, etc. So there's a cell phone video from inside a vehicle. He was taken from his vehicle. He went peacefully, for the most part when you're being under arrest, as peacefully as you can be. But he wasn't resisting. He wasn't pulling. He was agitated, and he seemed upset, probably scared. They walk him to the sidewalk where he sits down for a moment, and there's an officer. There's no audio at this point, but there's an officer kind of directing him or talking to him. And then they pull him up again, and they walk him across the street to another police cruiser. Which at this point, the video camera angle is very far, but you see him fall. I don't know if it's officers pushed him or if maybe he tripped, trying to walk, but whatever. He falls to the ground. And then the video goes from that angle to the next available video is the kneeling.
Which is the original video that everybody saw.
The main one everyone saw. I only looked into extra video trying to see if the truth about him being difficult was true or not. Not that it would by any means justify the actions of the officer to begin with, but just to have all the facts. So anyways, body cam footage was heavily redacted, blacked out all over. You can't see a lot of what's going on as the body cam footage. So anyhow, he peacefully goes to the cruiser, and it looks like he's going with them without issue, without cause. And then we get to the point where he's on the ground. Officer Chauvin is kneeling on his neck. Officer Tao is standing aimlessly to the side, kind of like Jesse mentioned, keeping people at bay, while two other officers, which I didn't pull their names, are also, kind of on top of him, holding him down in the back leg area or whatever. So a lot going on that created this uproar as far as the actions of this officer. We pulled some statistics about him because he has a rap sheet of other issues. First off, the tactic at hand is not police trained. It is not something that they're taught. It's not something that anyone within the police force is stating is something that should have been done, or it's not a way to apprehend somebody. To Jesse's point, he wasn't breathing. He was pleading for breath. He couldn't breathe. This man is pinned to the ground, face down, with a knee on his neck. He's already handcuffed and apprehended at this point. He's no threat to you.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, there's 4 of you to 1 of him. The actions of that are so deplorable and disgusting. And to stand there and just watch is just horrifying. If you haven't watched the video, I asked people online about, do you want this to be shared? Do you not want this to be shared? Because my point of view was kind of like, if I was someone that's victim to this type of thing, would I continuously want to see it over and over and over again? Mm-hmm. To which point I can actually ask you, Derek, is in a situation, and my wording on it was like, if this was someone where I know this could be me at any moment, would I continually want to be reminded I don't know if you're very active on Facebook, but if you just continued to see this video shared and shared and shared over and over again, is it more, do you feel more supported that people are supporting the cause, or is it more of like a hurtful thing? What's your take on that?
You asked that question. I can remember that question being asked to one of his sisters, and she said she didn't even see it yet.
Yeah.
And it was like 2 days later.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you actually, asked before you share it. I myself only watched the one I saw was Monday night.
Yeah.
I don't want to see it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Personally, so
yeah, and that's where that's kind of where I was at, and I put a post up on Facebook, and it was something along the lines of, does a bunch of white people sharing a video of this man being murdered help the cause? Are we helping the situation by sharing it? Is that being seen as a show of support? Is it more hurtful to the people that are involved in the situation? Because I want to be a part of the solution. I don't want to be causing more harm, but I also want to make sure that we're getting the point out there. So that's just something to think about. Majority of the feedback I got was, by you sharing it, at least shows that you're outraged like we are, and we feel supported. So, but I think it could go any way, and I think everybody views it differently, but I think it was just something to kind of think about. You have something you want to say, Chris?
Well, and I think with anything that you're sharing, whether it be, the magnitude of this or something that's not as important, it only gets more eyes and more exposure seen to it with more awareness. So I think, while it is painful, it's devastating to watch this disgusting video. Yep. We wouldn't have as big of the outreach as we've gotten without those shares. So I think it's kind of a catch-22 situation.
Yeah, it brings views and eyes to the situation at hand, because I mean that's the power of social media. Mm-hmm. But I think it also comes down to the reasons and why, the context of it. Do you have any opinion on that, Jesse?
I know that I only watched it once. I couldn't actually finish it.
Yeah.
But when it gets to it, like I posted statuses about it.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about how sick it is. I've talked about, him by name. I've talked about the cop. And I think that if people want to see it, based off of what they read with mine, they can go and search for it then.
Absolutely.
I think that might be an easier compromise you can share the awareness, you can share your outrage. You don't necessarily have to share the actual action. So I would think that that's probably the safest route to go about it.
That's fair. I think we all have a duty, as white folks, African American, whatever, to share this and bring attention to it and show support. I think that your concept behind it of, you can make a status showing your outrage and maybe not actually have the clip there. And if you want to watch it, then you have the ability to go search for it. Mm-hmm. Because when you post those videos, it creates that thumbnail. And I think the one of him is off the guy kneeling on him. Yeah. So people don't even want to see that. But anyways, if you want to watch the video, I'm sure you can find it at this point if you haven't seen it. So just to have some context to what we're talking about. Going back to Officer Chauvin, the kneeling on the neck, the situations that he's had previously, we can give you some information regarding statistics around him. One of you guys want to just read off some of the bullet points that we have there? Sure. So, the one thing, too, before we get into that is apparently Officer Chauvin and Floyd worked together for a long time. So I'm assuming he would have recognized him in the situation. They worked security together at a nightclub.
Yeah, so that was one thing I definitely wanted to talk about, because so Floyd worked as security at this club. Yep. Can't remember what it was called, the Nuevo, something along those lines. But he was there I got conflicting reports. I don't know if they worked together for 17 years or if he had started since 2019. That's unclear, but they knew each other for at least a year and a half. Let's just say that for sure.
Yeah, there was some mutual time there for sure.
For sure. Chauvin, though, I know has worked there for at least 17 years as an off-duty police officer. Yep. So what their jobs was Floyd was going to be inside security. Chauvin was outside, but still over a year and a half, it's hard to believe that you would not cross paths. I know that personally, I grew up working at a movie theater before I became a teacher. We had off-duty cops that would come in during the weekends just for crowd control type stuff.
Right.
And I knew every single one of them by name.
Of course.
These guys don't want to just sit there for 6 hours and not interact with anybody. So
yeah,
to say that they didn't know each other, I think there's
no way.
Hard to believe.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that they did because there's nothing to prove it, but hard for me to believe it. But yeah, other than that, though, going back to his rap sheet, this guy had 18 previous complaints filed against him formally.
Chauvin, that is.
Chauvin.
Yeah, Officer Chauvin, the one that was kneeling on the neck. If you're not familiar with the name, the one that was pinning him down. These are some reports about him.
Yeah. The Minnesota Police Department claims that all 18 were closed with discipline, but we also found articles from the Washington Post that 16 were not closed.
Yeah.
So it's still conflicting information about whether or not that was true.
This info was confirmed by police spokesman John Elder, by the way. So that's where we got it, and from a report from him too. Just to go with what Jesse said, one of the reports from John stated in his report, and it might have been a little bit older, but 12 cases against Chauvin, which have been either closed, inactive, or nothing became of them. They didn't do anything. So this is obviously updated numbers.
Yeah, and then Officer Tao, he was the one who was holding back the crowds, not somebody that was physically on top of Floyd. He has 6 complaints against him. 5 have been closed with discipline. 1 was still open at the time of the event. So going back to Chauvin, he was put on leave in 2011 for an inappropriate shooting of an Alaskan Native American. He shot an unarmed 21-year-old black man in 2008. He was one of the officers who murdered a Latin man with 16 bullets. They shot 42 times.
Wow.
And he was involved in a 2005 police chase that caused the death of 3 people.
What's the justification on 16 bullets
That's the issue.
for an unarmed man?
Yep.
And those are the ones that hit. 42 bullets were shot.
42 shots. Yeah. So I mean, he has a rap sheet of excessive use of force or violence. Obviously, all these murders or people that we've listed off were minorities. You know, there's issue regarding this officer. Now, there was a photo going around, and I don't know if we found an exact source, but there was a photo going around with him wearing a hat that said "Make Whites Great Again." Like, there's obviously issues with him. I mean, we can't say factually that he's racist, but it comes off pretty damn well that he's racist. Even outside of that, he obviously has an issue with an ego or a power trip, or he doesn't know how to hold himself accountable as an officer where it's protect and serve.
Just the way that he was looking at the camera and stuff when people are pleading for him to get off of this guy, check his pulse, do anything.
Yep.
Just he doesn't react.
Yeah, like
Tao talks to them. Tao pushes back. He at least shows even irritation.
Yep.
This guy looks stone-faced the entire time, looks at the camera, doesn't say a word, ignores them the entire time as if nothing matters. He passes out. They tell him he passes out, and he doesn't move an inch until the time comes when they put him onto the gurney, and even that he pulled him over like he's not a human being.
Yep.
I think those numbers that you were stating, the interesting thing about them is, like they say with other instances, is so one instance can be considered an accident. Twice is, a coincidence. Even 3 times is a pattern.
Right.
So I think, as much as you want to write this guy off for skeptics, that record is too deep to
18 previous complaints.
Yeah.
That's a lot of complaints against someone.
That's ridiculous.
And 3 instances of violence, whether they deemed it appropriate or not. I mean, 3 incidences of violence against minorities.
Do you guys think the blame falls on the higher ups in that, as far as the Minnesota PD goes?
I think it's an institutional issue at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, as the chief, or however the level of the tier is for officers, if you have someone in a position of power, which as a police officer you are in a position of power,
Sure.
Who is committing crimes essentially, and they're not being held accountable. 18 cases, with 16 open, you are putting people at risk. And as the commissioner or the chief or whatever, it is your duty to take this person off the force.
Yeah.
You're making your department look bad. You're making yourself look bad. You're putting your citizens at risk. Your job is to protect and serve the society. I don't understand how you can leave someone in that position consciously and go to sleep every night with no problem, knowing this man is out there. At any point, this can happen.
And I think that's
I
where
was going to ask you,
where the outrage comes from. I'm a union guy. I know Jesse is a union guy, and policing, the way it's set up throughout the country is, like you said, it's systematically institutionalized.
Yeah.
The last thing people want to do is, we always want to take the cop's version.
Of course.
And what's hard about it is the union. First thing they do, they protect the cop.
Yeah.
And Americans understand that.
Yeah.
But when police brutality is going on and it continues, and like you said, the cop looked at the camera, that's where the outrage comes from.
Yep.
No one's bashing policemen. You know,
Nope.
we all love, respect, you know, policemen. I know 4 or 5 in Canton personally. They're devastated by it because now they're endangered. But what the outrage is coming from is that these cops aren't being held accountable.
Yep. That's what it comes
And,
down
you know, a lot of people are attacking these kids, which is looting. I don't condone, but we want to put a higher standard on the kids when we don't do that on the police department.
Yeah.
And that's where
Good
the issue
point.
comes from, the outrage.
Good point.
Yep. You have to, and that's a big part of this, and we're going to get into more of the escalation and the protesting and stuff here in a minute, but that's where the accountability, like you said, you know, and you made another good point that I was going to bring up too about and you said it as the union, but the way I kind of see it is the police department as like a brotherhood. In union, whatever you want to call
Always
it,
has been.
and they're gonna
Yes.
hold a fraternity. They protect their own.
Protect their own.
I understand that as an officer, and I don't think it's necessary to preface that not all cops are bad. We understand that. You know, like Derek said, he's got people he knows personally. I have lots of people I went to school with that I know personally that are friends that are police officers. We know that they are not all bad. This isn't a bashing of police or saying that they're all out there to get you. That's not the point. But within that brotherhood also needs to come the fact that you are there to protect the people. And you need to be able, and maybe they're not in a position that they feel safe to do so, and that's part of, we'll get to a point of discussing change and how do we move forward. But part of that moving forward is that police need to hold each other accountable.
Absolutely.
If you have a partner, someone in your department, someone in an opposing department that you know that is a part of the problem, you need to come forward. You need to be put in a place that you are in a position that you can call them out. You pull them aside and you say, hey, you know what? That's not okay. That's not what we're here for. That has to happen. And these riots and this protest and this looting is because this isn't just George Floyd. This is hundreds of years of this happening time and time again with no change.
Yeah.
And people are just over it, rightfully so. So, Officer Chauvin, rap sheet of problem. He should have been out. The dude should not have been a police officer a long time ago. At this point, he's been brought into custody. They're saying arrested, custody, whatever. The other 3, I don't think, right? Not yet.
the other 3, not yet.
As of right now.
So just the main guy has been arrested. Obviously just opinion, but I believe, honestly, one is because they wanted to stop the rioting. So they're like, all right, you know, if we bring him in, because this was the fastest an officer's been brought in. It's as a union, like Derek said, it's a long process. It's like a year-long process to like arrest a police officer. 4 days he was brought in. So the rioting made a point. Also, people were like staking out his house. So I think a lot of it was to protect him.
Yeah.
Which, you know, whatever the case may be, they've brought him in and he's being charged, and we'll look at it as the positive. Let's get in quickly before we get to the charges, because we've kind of talked about police and protecting and serving and what their duty is technical responsibility of a police officer. Now, me and Jesse researched this, and I'm not going to lie. I was kind of surprised by the answer that we found to this, and I'm going to preface this by stating on Facebook that I have posted unintentionally some fake news, and I will explain. Officer responsibilities. So my impression was, as a police officer, that you are also considered a first responder. Meaning, if you show up and somebody's in duress, injured, harmed, whatever it might be, that it would be your responsibility to aid in them in a safe manner. So in the case of George Floyd, he's apprehended. He's handcuffed on the ground. The man has pissed himself. He can't breathe. He's crying out. He's not a threat anymore. He's face down on the ground with handcuffs. He's not going to get up and run away. He's pleading for his life. At this point, I would assume it is safe for a police officer to help him. Check his pulse. Sit him up against the vehicle. Get him some water. do something to aid in the man. You can't sit there and watch him die. I have to believe in the oath somewhere it says that. We found it hard to find something definitive, but I'm going to have Jesse read off some of the police officer responsibilities that we could kind of find, and go over some information, and then we'll kind of tie this back to George Floyd, his direct situation.
Yeah, so it started with that conversation of, well, they have to be legally obligated, and we were kind of looking for,
Something to quote
from the legal standpoint of what are they going to charge him with, aside from the knee, what else is going to go on there to pin that on him. And we tried to look up the legal obligation of these cops. We found, though, there's no particular law at all. We found 3 separate cases where legal cases went to the Supreme Court. One was in 95, one was in 2007, and then one was in 2018. And in all cases, they found that there is no constitutional obligation for a police officer to aid a person unless they are within the person's custody. So in this case, it would have applied. Chauvin did have custody of Floyd at that point. They had him in handcuffs, so he is going to probably be held accountable. But the thing that shocked us is if a cop rolls down the street and Ryan's beating the crap out of me on the side of the road, that cop does not have to stop and intervene and help me. He does not have to arrest Ryan for breaking a law.
And it's straight.
That was from the Supreme Court.
Straight from the Supreme Court states.
One of the instances, because we didn't write down all the instances because overall it doesn't really matter, but one of the instances was a woman who had a restraining order against her husband who had a violent past of abuse. She called the police twice because he was coming to her. He ended up kidnapping her 3 children and murdering them. Whoa. And when she tried to sue the police department for not getting there in a timely manner to help her, the Supreme Court ruled that there was nothing legally binding them to help her. Now, had they gotten there in the meantime and arrested him on the spot and then had him, they would have been legally obligated to make sure he made it to the prison. Yep. But there's nothing protecting that woman or those children from that happening.
That's unreal, because what's in the motto? Protect and serve.
It's on the damn police cars.
That's
so, and what they have quoted or written out as far as what custody is, because it states that the Supreme Court has repeatedly held the government has only a duty to protect persons who are, quote unquote, in custody. And they say custody is narrowly confined to situations where a person loses his or her freedom to move freely and seek assistance on their own. To Jesse's point, tying back to George Floyd, he is in custody at that point. He is handcuffed on the ground, unable to aid himself, which at that point I believe would show the officer has a responsibility to protect him, help him, aid him, medically, whatever it might be. You can't sit there for 9 minutes with your knee on the man's neck, pinning him to the ground to the point he cannot breathe. It's bullshit. This was very disappointing to read, as far as what we pulled up about the Constitution and the Supreme Court and them not breaking any law. What are police for?
That just goes to show you how deep the problem is.
You're telling me that, like, to Jesse's point, a cop could literally sit here while we're recording this show and watch us beat the shit out of each other and have no obligation to help us. How is that possible? How is that possible? That is your job. That is, if not to aid or protect me, what is a police officer there for? To pull me over for speeding tickets so they can put money in their pocket?
And that's the thing, is you have to
What
hope.
the fuck?
It legally makes it so that you have to depend on the good cop.
Right.
If you do get the bad cop, you are under no legal obligation.
You can't do anything
to protect and serve, to help me.
Yeah.
And you're rolling the dice, regardless of how many. We always love to say, and this is kind of going back to the union point, but like we love to say, well, there's so many more good cops than bad cops. I see that going around Facebook a lot right now, and it's partially being used as a justification, or to brush it off as if it's not a problem.
Sounds like something else that I hear. I just can't put my finger on
I
it.
know.
All white
Black lives matter.
Yeah.
Saying not all cops are bad cops is the equivalent of defending the statement Black Lives Matter with all lives matter.
And
Or I saw one that was, if your house is burning down and you call the fire department, they don't have to put water on every house.
Yeah.
Just because your house is the burning and it's the important one at that time doesn't mean your houses are less important. It's just not on fire. It's not an issue.
And the thing is if when you get to police, and this extends to the military also, you make it seem as if that's part of our freedom. They protect our freedom, and so people put them on this pedestal. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because they do. I love our armed forces. I have family that are cops, and the people that I know that are in the armed forces and that are police are good people that do their jobs correctly. But in the same breath, Derek and I work together. We're in a union of teachers. Every single year, there's a teacher that either hits a kid or sleeps with a student or does something like that, and they're immediately fired.
Yep.
And people are outraged at them. And people go, they should never teach again. They should go to jail for the rest of their lives. There's never a post that says, well, Jesse and Derek are good teachers. There's never a justification that brushes it off. It's just outrage at that person. If one of our colleagues sleeps with a student in our building, we're going to turn them in.
Yep.
Why is it that there's this idea that you have to defend the actions of the group as if it applies to all of them?
Yep.
If they were held accountable when these instances happened, you wouldn't have people out there saying cops are pigs.
Yep.
And all of this other stuff. You don't hear people saying, well, teachers are child molesters.
Yep.
You hear that from things like at the churches and stuff, but that's because a lot of times those people are moved. They're not held accountable.
Right.
Cops are moved. They're not held accountable. This guy has rap sheets of violence and he wasn't held accountable. So maybe if they start holding people accountable, you will have people you'll have cops that'll be able to turn in that person that will make the change.
Yep. I mean, it's a great point. And I've seen that repeatedly, because I'm not going to lie. I've been very open about the situation, and I've gotten into several debates or discussions with people about good cop, bad cop. There's not bad cops. There's not good cops. Whatever. It's not a blanket statement. I made a post today watching the Akron protest, and I made a post about being disappointed in the Akron police officers that were standing by laughing at the protest. Laughing. You were laughing at a protest
on video.
Live on video, where they're protesting police action, and you're ignorant enough to stand there and laugh. It's like laughing at a funeral. Even if the laughing was nothing to do with the protest, maybe you were just trying to keep yourself calm under a situation of stress, there is a time and place.
And that's privilege. That if he was on the other side of that fence, how much would the laughing be happen?
So I got into a debate with someone who also who saw my post, and her husband is a police officer, and we got into a debate about how my statement leads people to believe that I'm saying all cops are bad and that I'm putting all these cops in harm's way. I didn't say police shouldn't be laughing at protests as a blanket statement of police. It was directed specifically at a location of Akron, at a location of a protest, and the officers that were there. It's very specific. I'm not saying all cops are bad. Your actions as an individual, this is a perfect example of cops not taking the situation seriously. Not all, but the select few aren't believing that there is a problem.
And I hate to say it, but that goes back to, now another thing you can compare it to is like the COVID cases, where people are saying like, well, I've never seen anybody with COVID, so that means it doesn't exist. That's the selfish mentality that's saying like, well, whatever happens to me, that's what I'm taking as gospel.
Right.
Everything else doesn't matter to me. And that's the problem. And it's even worse in this circumstance because you're alienating an entire race of people.
Yep.
I wanted to say something. One of our listeners or watchers right now, Pam Staff, chimed in. She said she's from South Africa and moved continents with her family, left the country of my birth so that my children wouldn't have to live in such a racially divided tension and riots. The attempt at being an ally sometimes can be a fail, but it should be appreciated as a step forward.
I think she was referencing my comment about sharing the video and that second comment from her, but yeah, I don't know. So he's been arrested. I don't know what the timeline is at this point, as far as them going to trial or actual charges coming, or how quickly this is going to move along. he's being charged with third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter. Those, again, he's being charged. We need to look at it as a step forward and a step in the right direction. Whether those charges are significant enough, we can't determine that necessarily yet. But just for some insight of what they are. Third-degree murder is the unlawful killing of a human being when there was no preconceived intent. So basically, your actions result in them dying. So, in this situation, the officer Chauvin is kneeling on his neck. He's stating he can't breathe. The autopsy states that it was a combination of the apprehension, him maybe possibly being intoxicated. They didn't say whether or not he was, but if he was, and that he had other issues. He had other heart conditions. So I believe that they're going with third degree because they're not specifically stating via autopsy that the death was directly from the kneeling. They said it didn't show any signs of physical asphyxiation or choking or anything. I call bullshit, but that's what the autopsy says. Yeah. So they're saying third degree. And with that, it can be up to 25 years, $45,000 fine, or both. He's also being held with the second-degree manslaughter, which is any killing committed as a result of recklessness. The definition goes on a lot further than that, but it's kind of irrelevant.
Could be you driving your car, could be a hunting accident, could be
basically your actions, because of your direct actions, if someone's death results in it. So yeah, you're driving drunk, you could get manslaughter or something. That can be up to 10 years and or $20,000 fine. So, I mean, if he got convicted of both of these and they really held him accountable, the man could do up to 35 years in jail. Let's pray that happens. I mean, if you pray or whatever, let's hope that there's actually some action put forth. Some are kind of pushing for second degree. The difference between second degree and third degree as far as murder goes, the causes second degree causes the death of a human being with intent, but not premeditated. So at that point, he knew kneeling on him would kill him, but he didn't arrive there with the preconceived intent that I'm going there to kill George Floyd. But, he got called there because it was, as an officer, he got called to duty and he had intentionally killed him, whether it be out of malice, he knows him, he didn't like him, whatever. So at that point, it becomes second degree. And at that point, the first degree would be obviously premeditated. You knew you went there with intent. So I think they could push for second degree. Jesse, you kind of had an argument to that, to the point of getting from third to second.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, I wanted to be a lawyer if I wasn't going to be a teacher, so I love this type of stuff. But I think they went with third degree because they know that will stick. He's getting that third degree. He's getting the manslaughter. It's clear they know they can get that. I think when it finally goes to trial, they might push it up for a second degree attempt, because you can make the argument that you have people around you that are witnessing him passed out, that are telling you he's unresponsive, that are telling you to check his pulse, and that's at like minute 4. So for about 4 minutes, he's unresponsive. You aren't moving. You don't check his pulse. You don't move from there. You've been hearing him cry out for help. He's no longer doing that. So even you can't make the argument, well, I didn't know he was passed out. You know all of these things. At that point, if at any point his mind goes from, I'm going to apprehend this guy, to, well, he's unresponsive,
So be it.
Right. That's when it becomes second degree. When he knows that he could kill him and still does nothing, that's when it becomes second degree.
Because I watched the video once and I didn't even watch the whole thing, so I don't know the answer to this. But at what point did the kneeling cease, and where did it go from there? Do any of you know that?
How long was the kneeling?
Well, no, I know it was 9 minutes.
Yeah,
but what caused him to stop? And at what? So he kneeled for 9 minutes. What was the end? Because he was deceased before that.
Yeah.
So what after 9 minutes? Why did he stop kneeling on him, and where did it go? Does anybody know? Just out of curiosity.
That's kind of.
I know I try to throw references. I don't know for sure, but I was just curious if anybody knew that. But not that it's really relevant. But I was curious what caused the stopping. Like, why did he all of a sudden say, okay, I've kneeled for 9 minutes, at this point we're done?
The obvious answer is, he's deceased.
Right. But which was long before that. But so anyways, so we could push for second degree.
Yeah.
I think that there's a strong case, but third at least is a start.
The worst case scenario is that they come out and the jury says of second degree murder, innocent, and then they go on to third degree and he's guilty. Because you can try for both. It's not like if you go for second, he's going to be found innocent, he's going to walk.
Yeah.
They'll go through and they'll say, they can make an argument for first if they wanted to. Now, obviously that wouldn't happen because it wasn't intentional and it wasn't premeditated, but you can try for whatever. It's not like you choose one and that's it.
Justin Martin, who's watching, said that the kneeling ceased when the EMT got there and they put him on the gurney.
Yeah.
So they were kneeling basically until another set of responders arrived, at which point he was forced to remove himself from the situation, I guess, at that point. So good to know. I was curious what was the end all sale, like what stopped the actions at hand. Derek, thoughts on just on the apprehension, what he's being held for as far as charges goes?
Yeah,
what are your thoughts?
As far as charges, I have like a lot of friends, and they're like thinking, it was murder, first degree is the second, and my reply to that is like you said, 3 you can prove, 2 when you start bringing in intent, and this case is too important to lose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially on something procedural or so. The charge is 35. I mean, it's definitely 3 in the manslaughter. So I'm okay with 35. I think
on the manslaughter, I know what I read was it's if he's charged. Now, granted, these are convictions, but the jury has to. These are charges, but the jury has to convict him. If convicted, the manslaughter is a minimum of 1 year, which is nothing. But he's doing no less. I mean, he realistically should do no less than 1 year.
But it
needs to be much more than that. But
again, part of the outrage I think comes from so many cops actually getting off.
Mm-hmm.
When juries actually, to me, like I said, I'm old. And I'm a little concerned about the riots that are taking place. I was reminded of the '68 riots, but I was only 4 at that time.
That was in Akron, right? Were you talking about the one that was in Akron?
Oh, I was talking about the L.A. riots.
Okay.
And
I know there was an Akron one sometime in the
King
60s.
Assassination.
Gotcha.
Where all the cities were, like under one night, just like it happened now. There were riots in all the major cities.
Chicago, big one.
And that's what I'm fearing right now. I was young enough, I can kind of remember the Rodney King video, and I was real young, but it was the first time I questioned, how can people see a video and not say that the cops were, used over excessive force?
Yep.
But this video here was just like different. And just as an African American, I kind of pay attention to what's going on. And
absolutely,
and to me, you had the Georgia incident with the kid jogging, and of course, they weren't cops involved. Then you follow that up by what happened in Kentucky, and then you get this. It's just a lot, and and like I said, again, I just want cops held to a higher standard.
Agreed.
And the bad cops, you gotta
weed them out, man.
Yeah, you gotta weed them out. And it's coming to a crisis now, which is sad.
Yep. And I know that we're looking to, I know that like a lot of people are calling on the good cops to come out and make a stand, and whether it be posting a video online or making a social media.
Some have too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've seen some.
And a lot have.
But again, with that, when they do that, you're still like, you're breaking the code.
Right. That's my thing. That's what I'm kind of like. Can we call for them to do it? Should that's kind of along that line of not all cops are bad. Should they have to defend themselves? No, not necessarily. But it shows that it kind of puts out there that other cops aren't standing for it as well. Us as citizens aren't standing for it. But I think the bigger picture is that the people in power hold the power.
Yeah.
We can protest and we can do a podcast and we can share on social media, but we don't have the way we have the power to make change is in voting. Going out and voting officials that aren't, if our mayor at this point, Mayor Horrigan has done it. He came out and he's spoken. He was at the Akron protest today. He made a speech. He says, I'm here to listen. I hear you. I understand. Like, you guys have the right to. He even said, because someone at the protest said, let's keep this peaceful. They've given us this space to protest. And he came out and said, I didn't give you anything. This is your space to protest. I didn't have, like he's being supportive, but in a case where maybe he's not, and he doesn't do something to hold the police accountable. The way you make a change is vote. You vote them out of office. You vote your judges out of office if they're not fulfilling or they're holding whites to less accountability than blacks or something. You can make change in voting. We can make change by making our voices heard, but the people in power have the ability to really enact the change. And as officers, holding yourselves accountable, as the police chief, as the commissioner, holding your officers accountable, that's where the change can come. And this is a start by making sure that they know that we're not going to continue to accept it and putting them in a place where they feel uncomfortable enough that they're in a position where, like, I don't want to be associated with that. I'm fearing for my life because of the action of Officer A. I want to come out and get him out of place, and I think that's where people are at.
But just remember, if you're one of those good cops that is standing by and just letting this stuff happen, you could be pulled down like one of those other three are probably going to be. So I think it's better to just go ahead and break code and say, look, they're our biggest ally in this fight. It is how it is. They're the ones, the truth seekers, who are going to earn this fight for justice for many.
Well, and here's I have a question for you guys, and Seeden, I want to know what you think about this because it kind of applies to our school even sometimes. Like, do we think that this is a problem necessarily with, like, Rodney King? He was set free by a jury of people and those biases. Is this a police department problem because they're not vetting their people when they bring them in? Or is this a mentality problem where America is more racist than we think that it is? And that's why these bad cops walk, because half the time they're not getting arrested in the first place. And I would say that that's department. But then the other half of the time, you have instances where people walk, like, Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, those were blatant, I think.
Zimmerman,
and and I know he wasn't a cop, but that's the same instance of, black kid unarmed killed. And I mean, we've had instances where, we teach in an alternative ed building. We have difficult kids. Many of them have histories of crime, but a lot of them are good kids also. But we have a stigma that's on our building. A lot of people think of us as a bad school, and that's something that we're working to change, for years now, but it seems like we're finally starting to catch some tread. But regardless, we used to have times where cops would try to come down to the building and make arrests for kids if they had a warrant. We don't do that anymore because we had an incident where we had a cop chasing a kid through our building, and it was highly inappropriate. I was there that day. They wanted me to grab the kid as she ran by to help them, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing it.
No.
And it caused mayhem. And that was the first instance, because I've been privileged growing up, man. I'm skinny, white, blonde-haired Jesse. I never had a problem with the cops my whole life. And once I started teaching at Compton, our kids can be assholes. They're yelling stuff at them and stuff. Sometimes it's warranted. I get that. But, like, I've seen some inappropriate stuff by law enforcement at my building. And I don't know where the problem starts and where it ends is my thing.
Yeah, to answer your question, I always hate I haven't called someone racist. All I can do is refer back to my experiences. And like I said, I've probably, through my lifetime, been pulled over, at least 10 times by cops. I've always been polite because that's how I was raised. And they checked my record and let me go.
Yep.
My wife, I'll just give you in a situation. One time she was driving. I was much younger. She was younger, and we were going through Dalton, Ohio. I'll never forget, on Route 94, and she had a little light in the back of her license plate that had burnt out. The other one was still lit. It wasn't even dark yet. And the officer pulls us over. I'm laughing because she's probably like, got the smile on her face. Because anyway, she was driving. Officer comes over, doesn't say anything to her, and said, "Can I see your driver's license?" One time I was.
Seeing your wife is white, right?
Yeah, my wife is white. I didn't even say that because it doesn't matter to me, but she is.
Right.
And so, yes. But another incident, I was used to coach my first 10 years of football, and it was like 2-a-days, coached at Timpkin High School. I'll never will forget this. And my neighborhood where I walk, where I live, I decided to walk down to the store. And this is broad daylight, 3 or 4 o'clock afternoon. And I had on these little, that's when I was cut then. I had on these little half cut shirt, you know.
Oh, yeah. Crop top.
The old Ezekiel
shorts,
Elliott.
but they had no pockets. So all I had in my hand was my wallet and my keys. And I walked down to the little market store where I, you know, always go. And I got a can of chew in the newspaper. And I'm walking back down Cleveland Avenue, broad daylight. And 2 cops come out of the bushes, boom, had guns to my head.
Oh, Jesus.
And it scared the crap out of me. And then my boys there were small at the time. And I got one that would just take off running. I'm just so glad he wasn't with me. And the cop said, yeah, we got a question. We got a call that said someone said you were walking through the neighborhood with a gun in your hand. And it really, really got to me. And I was really, didn't even feel like a man. And so to answer your question, Jesse, I've been racially profiled. I have to tell my boys what to do, and they scare me to death because they're young, kind of like some of the kids I see. And I'm saying always have, you know, your driver's license, you know, in your wallet, your registration. Yep. Don't reach for it until they pull you, you know, until you tell them. And so I know I've been racially profiled.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I've been, like I said, black 56 years. And I know sometimes me and my wife will go to a restaurant, especially down south. We've had people look at us and just walk out.
That's ridiculous.
And so we've experienced it, but I don't even look at Jesse as being white. I mean, we're just, you know, but I have been racially profiled. So that's why I got the frustration. I can feel when the kids are doing things. I keep calling them kids that I see that aren't protesting the way I would probably like them to protest, but they're kids and they're angry. And I feel their frustration. I mean, Monday night, you know, I just wish people were out as outraged about that man being murdered as they were about Kaepernick taking the knee. And I don't want to change discussions.
No, that's a good
because,
point.
Valid point, though.
You know, and people, when that went on, I know I had people ask, what do you feel? I said, you know what? I wouldn't do it, but I understand why he's doing it. But America didn't even understand why he was doing it.
That's because they didn't want to listen.
Didn't want to listen.
Yeah.
People will change the narrative to fit what works for them.
And, you know, so police brutality in African-American neighborhoods has been going on. And it's something, you know, and I think we've been amazingly patient with it, you know. But when you murder a guy and the cop is looking at the camera and does it anyway, I'm wondering how much more have they done in that police department?
Yep.
You know, and then to me, I know 4 days, they got him, they arrested him, but doggone it, he should have been arrested the next day along with those other three.
Then and there.
And then you might have stopped these riots.
And I was talking with him a little bit before the show, and we were comparing that. Like, had he been arrested the next day, you know, you probably could have prevented a lot of this. You know, that's what's interesting.
That video came out the same day, right?
Came out Monday night. Was it Monday night?
When did it happened Monday?
Yeah.
So the video, I'm pretty sure, was out the same day, later that day.
It was quick.
The way
It was
information
real quick.
goes, I would assume it was.
If that was me or you,
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Any of
a
us.
citizen, not a cop,
Yeah.
you would be brought in at least to be questioned
Oh, yeah.
right then and there.
And that's what that point is. Higher standards should be
Yes.
held for
Yes.
cops as well.
And to Jesse's, so to answer Jesse's question, you know, and to kind of echo what Derek has said is, I think it's a combination of both. I think it is racism. I think it's ignorant for anyone to believe that racism is not an issue in this country. I don't even know how you would be able to factually debunk that racism is not an issue within this country. That tied or that in combination with a systemic institutional issue within the police force. The police department or the forces was something that was created a long time ago. And much like many of our laws and our rights and things have not changed. The police academy, for the most part, I mean, it could change state to state or department, but on the average, it's a 6-month course. So you've got an 18-year-old or 19-year-old kid that maybe just graduated and wants to be an officer, and you put a gun in his hand and you say, go be Batman. After 6 months of training, they're not psychologically, and obviously not every cop that starts off is that young, but like Akron just graduated 47 new officers, many of whom are very young. And you put a gun in their hand and you send them out on the street to fight crime. and you're not psychologically ready for that, you cannot learn in 6 months how to handle a life and death situation. You got training in the military, where the military have to go through literally a bullet pointed sheet of things that you're required to do before you can fire on someone. If someone fires on you, they're required to keep it on their person, on like a lanyard, and it says, if you're fired on, you have to do this. If that doesn't work, do this. If that doesn't work, do this. 5, 6 things before you can fire back. You've got officers out here who shoot and kill us first. It's not shoot them, and we've talked about this. We're like, it's what's taught is that you shoot to kill because you don't know what they've gotten, and they might pull a gun out and shoot you. But is that the right thing to do?
But even besides that, though, like we've talked about, I carry my gun, I have CCW. In my 8-hour course, I'm taught things that I know before I pull my gun. I know my target, know what's behind it. I know the laws that are going to get me if for some reason I think I do need to kill, if I think Seeden's grabbing a gun behind him and I shoot him and there is no gun, I'm going to jail.
Absolutely.
So I better think twice. I know all of these things going forward, and that was in an 8-hour class. I applied for the police academy once, and I took a test that took me about 8 hours for the whole day to go through everything. I know they got more training than me.
Absolutely.
So why is it that, and I'm not saying all,
you can hold
but why is it that I'm more restrained and better with my weapon than some of these police are? I understand that you're in a high danger situation. I understand that you are going out and
your life on
sacrificing your safety to protect me. I get that. But sometimes that's not good enough. And if it's not good enough, you don't need to be on the police force. If I can't control my temper in the classroom, and when a kid cusses me out or pushes past me or does something of that nature, I've had terrible things. See, I won't get into it, but you've had terrible things done to you. Kids calling you the N-word, kids spitting at you. He didn't haul off and crack somebody, and if he can't handle that because he's the adult in the situation, he shouldn't be a teacher. I shouldn't be a teacher. If you can't handle the situation and know what's going on around you and protect yourself in a proper manner, and I'm not talking about where they're reaching for something. I'm talking about these instances where a person is unarmed, clearly not a threat, and yet you still act, you should not be a cop. And if you do take that action, just as if Seeden or I were to hit a kid, we should be fired, you should be fired. You should be having legal action taken against you.
To the same standards as anybody else. Just like politicians we've talked about, you are not above the law. As a police officer, you're in uniform, and sure, you have certain rights and things to act upon. But if you commit a crime, you should be, and you're not in a lot of these cases, you should be held equally responsible as anybody else. So to further the question, it's institutional. It is improper training. It is, again, you can't know after that period of time how you're going to handle that situation. You know, psychologically, that's a lot to choose between life and death. And someone commented on here who was in the police academy, and he said that the academy teaches that you shoot 2 center mass and 1 to the head. That's what you're taught. And that you're to shoot until the threat stops completely. That's what the academy teaches you.
See, and that's more that gung-ho attitude.
And I believe that that's where there needs to be institutional change. I understand that you're in a high stress, sometimes scary position where you don't know what you're getting yourself into. But what we know as citizens is that we know you're armed. We know that for the most part. Now, there's criminals that are going to shoot a cop, and those are bad people, and whatever happens to them at that point.
I think that's acceptable.
But the average day citizen knows that you're armed, and for the most part, they're scared of you.
Yeah.
So for you to come in, gun out, guns ablaze, and guns at your head for buying some stuff at the freaking store.
And going back to that real quick,
insane.
You're legally allowed to carry a gun. Like, if somebody did see you, let's say you did.
Right.
If you're walking down the street with a gun in your hand, that's an open carry.
Akron
this is Ohio.
allows it.
You are allowed to open carry. So why are you rolling up on me in the first place?
Yeah, like I said,
racial profiling.
Like I said, I've been racially profiled, and
there's plenty of other
examples
of,
too.
I mean,
yeah,
we can talk
Yeah.
Your situation.
Yeah.
We could talk Dylan Roof. We can talk Dylan Roof, who shot up a ton of people, who was peacefully detained and was taken to fucking Burger King.
Yeah, taken to Burger King.
This
That's
dude
the
was
part
taken
that
to Burger
that
King
gets
by
me.
the
They
police.
took him to Burger King. And
But you've got an unarmed man on the ground, helpless, who is murdered.
And even when you look at the discrepancy of how many African Americans actually get shot to how many African Americans are.
Yep.
And there's a problem, and that's all. And that's all I think people are saying. And what's great about it, honestly, I've gotten so many phone calls this week, and my friends were white. They were reaching out to me, and they are outraged. And that's where the change comes, when you're not actually, I think, being targeted, like in this conversation. We're talking, are African American more, targeted by the police, or in the case, are they coming under police brutality more than other sections? But when you have other Americans, speaking out finally, it's sad that it took this. But sometimes, you know what? If you're in rural America, you have no concept of what's really going on.
Yep.
Like some people are busy; they don't really watch the news. Some people just don't even realize that this is even going on until now.
You got to open their eyes, man.
Yeah,
we have to be there for
each other.
It's nice to know you're not alone.
That's
exactly the best feeling. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that we can all. I think I would imagine all four of us would agree that the vast majority of both citizens and police officers are for the good.
Oh yeah,
yes, they're not. The vast majority of people are not racist. There are racist people.
Yeah.
The vast majority of cops are good. And the point of that statistic is there's a lot higher percentage of good, which means that this group of good people can overpower and outweigh and come forward and weed out. You can't stop racism. I mean, you can stop racism, but the issue with racism is it's taught.
Yeah.
You're not born racist. You're taught.
Racism outside of the force is impossible to stop.
Correct.
Racism inside of the force, that's something we can control and meander the way we want.
So we can't stop out racism as a whole, but within the institution, there's a greater good of cops. There's a greater good of citizens, and if we can come together, we can start to inflict some change, which kind of leads us to the next segment. But there is to your point, there is racial profiling. The numbers are higher. This year alone, I can't remember exact number, but it was like 41 whites have been killed by cops to I think it was 47 whites to 31 blacks. So the layman or the person that's ignorant to want to believe that there's an issue is going to say, well, obviously more whites were killed than blacks. The issue to that is that 73% of America is white.
Yep.
To 13% that's African American.
Way more people.
Yeah.
So if you bring that to an even ratio, African Americans are greatly higher at risk of being killed by a cop. Yeah. And it goes down a whole nother road of, well, there's more interactions put with police, so obviously there's a higher risk. But that's because of profiling. Mm-hmm. Because one of the studies I read straight up said that African Americans are at a far higher risk or chance of being detained, handcuffed, arrested, pulled over by police than whites. Mm-hmm. But far more often, whites were the ones that actually had something on their person when they were pulled over or detained.
Yeah.
You're profiling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're pulling over the person with the broken out headlight because you just want a reason to pull them over.
Or even to get money. I mean, a lot of cities actually targeted the poor.
Yep.
Or a lot of small cities need the income.
Yeah. That's why redlining is a thing.
Yeah.
To straight up say that there's not an issue, redlining within lending and within banking and with finance and stuff was created because specifically of racial profiling and saying, I'm not going to lend to them because of that.
The person in my neighborhood.
Yeah. It's out there.
Yeah. I saw a post earlier, I don't know, 2 days ago or something like that, from a friend of mine named Elena, who asked, what kind of things can we do to help with the public idea of this, basically how to get rid of racism and things like that. And I know for me personally, I said you have to have interaction with black people.
Oh, you gotta talk. You gotta talk.
I grew up in urban schools.
And that's why
You know.
you fit naturally in with our building. I mean, first year came in, I'm like, look, he's got report these kids.
Yeah.
Some people just don't, you know.
Yeah, and you have to know. You're right.
Oh, yeah, and I don't even want you can
We
be
got
black
some
and
people-
not be have report.
We got some people in our building where you're like, I don't know how you got this job, but
Jesse's got a Michelle Pfeiffer and Dangerous Minds thing going on.
But it is through communication.
So-
I mean, you got to talk.
so many people though that are the ones that are defending these actions that are doing all this are the people that went to the schools that got a 1% minority rate.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, no shit. You have no problem with cops because they're not the ones patrolling your
they're not-
neighborhood.
yeah.
You got one sheriff in your town and he doesn't have any crimes to deal with except for the dog got loose or something. And it's just,
But I think it's just naturally not, if you're not in that position, or just to say you're not even black, if you're not black and you don't have that experience, why would you know?
Yeah.
I do think that
You know what I'm saying?
I never was.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally, because I don't understand how you can comment on something of a situation. So like all these people ignoring that there is an obvious problem between police and black community. How can you even comment on that if you're not part of that community?
Yep.
And it's just like you don't understand situations and things. Like I didn't know what poverty was until I started teaching in our school.
Jeez, yeah.
I mean, I thought I grew up in the ghetto because I grew up in
poor,
Akron and there were some rundown houses. I've seen some kids' houses that are just unbelievable. And I've seen, and you know, I've never been racist, but I never fully understood the level of just injustice and things that happen. Because once I got down to the school and I'd hear these stories, and you see the conditions, and you see the interactions, I was like, well, shit. I mean, you got to really have some exposure to this stuff if you're making a comment on it, to understand what's going on in these communities and in these situations. I mean, it's just wild.
Unless you've been subject to it, like your point. Unless you've been subject to it directly, by either you've been an African American, you grew up primarily in a minority group, you've went to school with it. Unless you've been subject to it directly, you have no right to be telling people that they don't have a right to be angry. They don't have a right to protest. That the way that they feel is untrue. That they're making it. You can't. So I'm glad you shared your direct experiences because I don't have. I do have privilege. I don't have the fear of when a cop pulls me over that I have to be overly alert or concerned. Now I'm still always respectful because I do respect police, and I will refer to them as officer. I ask them, can I grab my belongings? You know, I'm always very polite, but that's out of respect. It's not out of fear. Where there's so many that are terrified of even just the possibility of getting pulled over, and we cannot. Me as a white man have no right. Like a lot of these people I'm seeing online, to be telling people what they can and cannot do when it has nothing to do with them. Yeah. They're not the one that's being affected.
Particularly when you have an opinion that's opposite to what's going on. But it's there.
Don't be
it's
naive.
out there.
You can have your opinion all you want. But
yeah,
you can't tell someone that's directly involved. That's directly.
Or if I give my opinion,
yes,
you know, then you just rip it, or
right.
What's the word I'm looking for? Just empathy.
Empathy. And that's where we need to be more. We need to be more together.
We need to
not be attacking each other.
Listen to each other. Right? Just talk.
And people always, I'm seeing a lot of like, well, if you don't do this, then this won't happen type of thing.
It's not like.
See, if that happened to you, I mean, quick background. This man is the man that drives kids home when he doesn't have to, brings them in popcorn and snacks, gives them money for little things that they don't need any money for. I mean, he has kids sweep up his room real quick and throws them $5-10 or something here and there, and it's just like Seeden is the most genuine person, and I mean this truthfully. You are one of the most genuine people that I know, and for a cop to profile you and think that you are a danger, knowing all that you do for your community, for our school, and just the genuine good person that you are. I love Seeden. So if it can happen to him, don't tell me that people are putting themselves in bad situations.
Yep.
And that's another thing, though, of tuning out reality and listening to the narrative that you want to broadcast. That's why they would profile someone like that. So.
And there's two different narratives to that though too, because we've talked in previous episodes about crime and what comes of your actions and things. There's a whole nother narrative outside of this situation, because there are times if you are blatantly breaking the law and stuff, and you're going to be held accountable for your actions, okay. Yeah. But in a situation like we're discussing, this isn't a Ahmaud Arbery where people are pulling up his history and what did he do. Look, George Floyd was on the ground with no weapon. There's no risk to those police officers. It does not matter what he did leading up to that. To lead to his death. If he broke the law and he needs to be detained and arrested and go to court for his actions, okay. But it does not justify the actions that took place. There's no reason to pull video or wait longer to see what else is going to come out, because none of that is relevant to how he was detained and the actions of that officer. That's what we're looking at.
Especially for a $20 bill. Like, this isn't even an instance of he hit somebody, or this wasn't a violent crime that they rolled up on. This was a counterfeit $20 bill. We don't even know if he knew it was counterfeit. I've passed 25 or 20 bucks that I didn't know was counterfeited before.
Yeah, our kids are real good at that. They bring that to us. I'm like, man, that looks real.
Right.
You gotta watch when you get them changed.
Right. But just to be full disclosure, because I will always call us out or be truthful with our views, and we've gone down both routes, and that's a different story to this topic, because that's not what this is about. There's not a need to look at a criminal past in what the situation at hand is. It does not matter what he did leading up to the arrest, because when he got arrested, he was complicit. He went with them. He didn't cause an issue. He was going to go and be held accountable for whatever actions it was, whether he did anything or not. The officer is the one that needs to be focused on at this point, and the divide online about it needs to stop. If you don't agree, then just, you know what, in certain situations, keep it to yourself.
Exactly.
Debate it with your friends that you know are like-minded. But we need to be focusing our attention on a positive change and not be battling each other over, not rioting matters over someone's death. Like, I don't fucking care about Target. They'll be fine. Like,
they got insurance.
They've got insurance. So that can be replaced. You know, what should be happening is Target should be coming out and freaking defending him. Or like I've seen Foot Locker, Reebok or someone. Reebok, I think it was, posted something great today on Instagram. Slideshow of images that said, Reebok would not exist without African Americans. We support African Americans. Like, for whatever reason they did, it does not matter. But these places should be coming forward, and a lot of people, which I really want to get into this protester part because it's going to tie into that. But a lot of these local businesses are coming out that have been looted and stuff in Minneapolis, because everyone's saying, "Oh, looting's ridiculous, and there's no point in stealing," and people are trying to speak up for the businesses. Well, there's a bunch of businesses that are there that have come out and said, look, we're insured.
Yeah.
Our business will be replaced. George Floyd is not coming back.
Personal always outweighs material.
Yes. They can speak for themselves. We don't need to insinuate. Not that I'm saying we condone it or not. We'll get into that. But the point is we need to be together and focus our energy on one thing, and that's the issue at hand.
Yep.
With that being said, let's get into protesting. Let's get into what's going on. There's protests going on right now. I know Cleveland is before we started the show, was a mess. Akron held a very what?
Well, I was reading some updates. Akron apparently got a little violent after the original group left.
Akron, for the most part, for majority of the day, we'll get into this, but they held a good one. Whatever. Protesting. Let's get into protesting. Okay. Read some rights, Jesse. As a protester, we pulled this from the ACLU. We wanted to kind of just figure out if you're going to go out and protest, which tomorrow at Hardesty Park, 5 p.m., me, Jesse, and Chris, I believe, are all attending. There is a protest for George Floyd, and it is a peaceful protest. There are going to be kids there, families there.
Candlelight vigil.
We're going out to show support for him. Please, if you're attending, this needs to be a peaceful show of support, respectful, but we will be there. So if you plan on attend, or if you plan on attend to protest somewhere else, whether it be, I know Columbus is having them, Cleveland, across the country, your rights as a protester. I will have Jesse read off what some of these are, just so you are aware and you can keep yourself in out of harm's way or do things appropriately.
Yeah, so starting it off, your rights are going to be strongest taking place in public forums, so either on the street, the sidewalk, or the parks. Those are places where there's no private enterprise or anybody that will be able to say anything or have any special parameters that might inflict on your rights.
It's a public space.
Yeah, you can't just do all these things at private businesses. They have the right to kick you out. So public space is number one go-to. Second, you may also go to government buildings or plazas as long as you do not block access to the building or interfere with the purpose of the property. So if you were to go down, I know the Akron protest today was at the police department. As long as they didn't interfere with police activities, keep people from coming and going, they were rightfully allowed to be there, and that's why it went off with no problems. Your government may restrict your speech if you are on private property. That just means they can kick you out. They can say, hey, we don't want that here. They can boot you out of there. That's why we keep it public.
If the property owner, if you're at the parking lot of AutoZone, and AutoZone says, hey, we don't want that here. We've got customers coming and going, and they alert the police, they can just have you relocate.
Absolutely.
So at that point, because the property is not owned publicly, it's that owner of that business. So if you're on private property, it's not saying that you can't continue to protest, but you might be asked to be relocated.
Just know your location, because this ties into some of the other things going forward. Yep. If you are in a public space, you have the right to photograph and to take video, and that includes police. A lot of times people feel that they do not have the legal, cops will tell you you're not allowed to film me, put that down. You are legally allowed to film at a protest, and you can film an officer. If you see an officer doing something that is against your rights, film that person. You are legally allowed to.
Jump down a couple, because I kind of put that one out of place, that last one.
Okay, yeah. So police officers going in with this cannot confiscate, demand to view, or delete any of your photos, videos, or anything else of that matter.
Yes, sir.
If they do, they need a warrant. All right. So, and we'll get into kind of what happens if something were to happen where they violate your rights in a minute, but they cannot view it, delete it, or ask to even see it without a warrant. And you can tell them that. You do not need a permit to protest as long as you do not obstruct cars or pedestrian traffic. So if you're on the sidewalk, if you're in the street, or if you're in a park, you are allowed to be there as long as you are not obstructing traffic. Cars come by, move out of the way.
I want to pause briefly at this one just for a moment, just to play devil's advocate and to shed a light on both sides, because, again, this is not an attack of the police. I specifically stop at this one because of the Akron protest today. This specifically states you do not need a permit as long as you are not interfering with traffic, either pedestrian or automobile. I watched live video for several hours today on and off of Akron protest. This one directly was, for the most part, being broken. And I just want to say that I do compliment the Akron Police Department, because they honestly did have, at this point, the ability to say, this is broken up, you need to move, you need to relocate, because I saw them sitting in intersections, moving cones in front of traffic, blocking vehicles. And they weren't being abrasive or creating a riot or anything, but they were essentially going against this specific right. And all Akron Police Department did was peacefully follow them to kind of deter traffic from anybody getting harmed. So I think we just need to make sure we commend the good and the bad of everything. And they did a very good job in Akron, at least, of even though this necessarily was kind of straying from what's allowed, they did allow things to go on without creating any issues or causing a scene, and they didn't try and break anything up. So, okay, continue.
And that kind of actually leads into the next one. Had they asked to move them, they would have been within their right to do so. If you do not have a permit, you may be asked to relocate for safety reasons. So that could be because you're blocking traffic, because things are getting out of hand, for whatever reason. Police are legally allowed to make you move to another location if it interferes with safety.
Yep. And they just redirected traffic. They blocked roads. They asked for pedestrians and cars to go different directions so that people could continue their march. People marched from the police station. They went down Market. They went all the way up Market. They went down Highland Square. They went down Main. I mean, they were everywhere. They were outside, and they were in the middle of the road. You know, so they were definitely interfering with pedestrians and automobiles, And not that they did anything wrong but the police could have asked them to move, and they allowed it to happen because for the most part everything was remaining peaceful.
Yeah.
So, but just know your rights, that if you are asked to move, they're not trying to stifle your right to protest. These are just the regulations, and this is for your safety as much as anything else. Mm-hmm. You don't want, because I've seen it, I'm sure everyone's seen it, where you're protesting in the middle of the street and someone comes barreling through because they don't agree with you protesting and you're in their way.
Yeah, we saw that today.
Yeah, you would hate. I mean, they have a duty, again, like we talked about, protect and serve. So if they ask you to move for your safety, don't take it as they're breaking up your right to protest. That don't immediately jump to that. At least be conscious of what's going on.
In the event that you are not doing any of these things, not in the street, not blocking traffic in any form or fashion. For instance, tomorrow at Hardesty Park is a very large park. If people remain in this park, this would apply perfectly.
Yes.
Police cannot break up the gathering unless there's evidence of a riot, disorder, or interference to public safety.
So again, like I mentioned, as long as everyone goes there and remains peaceful, we will be able to have this respectful gathering and show support for George and his family and everything. And they can't come, whether they agree with it or not, they can't come and break it up. Right. So let's remain peaceful.
Yeah. And that's what we have for your rights. So keep that stuff in mind. The big ones, I think, are the filming is something that people get misconstrued a lot. Know that you are within your legal right to film everything. The only time that's not allowed is if it directly interferes with police action, and that would be like if you were getting in the middle of an arrest trying to film something.
Right. Obstructing, yeah.
Right, yeah. Which obviously, I mean, most people are not doing that. Don't do that. But other than that, stay peaceful, stay in public areas, and know your rights going into things. If you don't know your rights, this is what, I teach my students all the time, know your rights, because a lot of people don't.
Yep.
And a lot of people think that free speech means you can do whatever you want. And a lot of people think that cops have a lot more power than they do. And it's a sweet ground in the middle where, we can express ourselves. We can do what we need to do to make change without having to have all of this tear gas and military involvement and things like that that's going on around the country.
Yeah. And importantly is remain calm. If you are detained, the best thing you can do is remain calm. Mm-hmm. And I know that can be scary. I know getting handcuffed, people have anxiety or feel restricted, and that can be a scary thing. But the best thing you can do is remain calm in that position, because you don't want to put yourself in a place that cop feels threatened, because we've seen what can happen in that situation.
Anything you say can or will be held against you.
Well, and also they actually don't have they aren't required to read your Miranda rights. Apparently, I saw that something too. But
not with a detainment, because you're not being arrested.
Right. So remain calm. In respect, you can ask why you're being detained. I think that's in here. You know why they're holding you. Are you being detained? Are you free to go? But do your best to remain respectful, because for the most part, if you're respectful, they will be. Again, not all cops are bad. They're not. But they have a duty to protect people. We
wrote down here. If you are detained, just know that the police cannot detain you without reasonable suspicion that you have or are about to commit a crime. So if you are peacefully protesting and you're not one of those people throwing things or acting suspiciously, you have no reason to be detained. If for some reason you are detained and you're one of those people that are peacefully protesting, like Ryan said, ask if you are being detained and ask why, and also remind the officer that you are taking video or photos, and that is your right under the First Amendment. And that does not constitute reasonable suspicion for criminal activity. So you are well within your rights to film. That cannot be used as suspicion for them to detain you. And then finally, we talked about this before. What do you do if your rights are being violated? So if you go down, you're peacefully protesting, you've not done anything wrong, and yet your rights have been violated, there are a few things that you can do to protect yourself. When you can, write down everything that you remember, including the officer's badge number, patrol car number, and the agency that they worked for. Another thing you can do is gather all the contact information from fellow witnesses. So if you witness something happening, make sure that you follow up with that person, even if it doesn't happen to you. Protect each other. Take photos of any injuries or injustices if you see them happen. And once you have all of this information, submit it to report to the agency. That can be done to their internal affairs or to the civil rights. Can't think of it right now. Civil rights department
there, yeah. That you want to make sure you file that report with. So tying directly into this, and this is going to be, I think, probably a bigger debate and everyone's views on this are a little bit different. I know a lot of our listeners or viewers have different opinions on this. Rioting versus protesting, big debate right now. I kind of want to get everyone's thoughts on that. I'm going to preface this personally by saying, and this is just my opinion, I'm not saying I condone rioting. I'm not saying I condone looting, but I get it. I understand why it's happening. Like I said earlier, I don't believe I'm in a position where I have the right to tell these people that they don't have a right to be angry and they don't have a right to be upset and that they can't go out and do what they feel they need to do to bring attention to what they're being, what's happening to them, what is happening to these African-American men, some women. Their lives are at risk. They have fear of leaving their house. And I don't have that. I don't fear when I leave my house that I might die today. They're mad, rightfully so. So again, I don't say I condone it, but I'm not against it either. And I used to be really ignorant to that, honestly. My previous view on it was rioting is stupid. Like that was initially would be my thought, is rioting is stupid. This doesn't serve any point. But Colin kneeled. He was attacked for it. Mm-hmm. People have peacefully protested. Nothing gets done. We made a valid statement, very well written statement at the beginning of this show about how rioting changes things. Most most social changes, whether it be for gay rights or worker rights. Yep. So you can work an 8-hour shift and not have to be working all it. Your rights have all, for the most part, come from a war or some sort of riot. Mm-hmm. The ending of slavery was from a war. It's essential to a riot. People were murdered, killed on a battlefield. That's where change happens. So, with that being said, things are escalating. Minneapolis is burning right now. Cleveland is on fire. I'm not sure what else has happened since we've started the show. But the way I kind of see it, and where I struggle with it is I understand that the reason things escalate is because peacefully isn't changing. No change has come. George is not the first African-American male that has been murdered without cause. This is over the course of a long period of time. And the things that we've tried aren't working. So people are angry. They're upset. There's a lot of young people. The generations are different. Me as in my 30s, I can kind of think things a little bit differently and react differently than I would have if maybe I was a 21-year-old. If I'm a 21-year-old and I'm scared for my life and I'm pissed off, things happen differently. So I think we need to not direct or tell people they're right or wrong. But I think people also need to consciously think, and it's going to be our next topic after we go around and everyone kind of talks their view on the rioting and stuff. But what we can do to actually make change, and be peaceful. Because I think it can be powerful if we get enough people together and we do it right. I think we can do change. One of the biggest issues from these peaceful protests and why I think a lot of times we don't see change is because it happens once and then we get distracted by something else and it doesn't matter. Yep. If we can do a peaceful protest, and maybe not every day is realistic, but every weekend or twice a week in front of the police department, and we're rioting for change until change happens. Those are things, it can't be once and then done because it won't change anything. And that goes for a lot of different things. But be conscientious of the businesses you are destroying because, in some of these communities, Minneapolis is an example where this is going on is, government housing and stuff is burning down where people live, where low income grocery stores where a lot of people get their food are burning down. People's jobs and livelihood are being destroyed. And then the next morning when they need to go to work or do something, they don't have the ability to. So you don't want to, you want to affect positive in your community and not burn your own house down, quote unquote. Like this is your community. We're trying to do something for the good. Let's go to you, Jesse, and kind of get your viewpoints. I want everyone to kind of weigh in on what they think.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. I'm all for protesting. I even said, to the point where I'm okay with where it's directed. I watched those initial videos and I saw them, breaking out the windows of these cop cars, going after the police station. I'm for that.
Yeah.
I don't condone violence in any shape or form. I don't think that human life should be seen as something that's not valuable. And I don't like putting people in, dangerous situations. But in Minneapolis, the police are the ones that caused this situation. They brought this on them. And I'm okay with directing that anger at them. When it comes to the stores and everything, they're insured, so I don't really care. I don't have a strong, defense for them. I think you hit the nail, though, like when you said, don't ruin your own communities. If we're burning down all the stores and everything that we go to, then that's not going to help us in the long run.
Right.
But I say put the pressure on the people that have caused the issue. And even if, some of those cops that, took the heat that night, they weren't one of the ones that were doing it. Maybe there were perfectly good cops that were there that did it, but that puts the pressure on them to go, well, damn, I don't want to deal with this every single day for the next week. Maybe we should have called him out when we saw that he had shot an unarmed person or killed people in a car chase. So yeah, that's my thoughts. I think direct it a little bit better, but I also understand it, and I know that Target and everything, they're getting their money. They're going to come back just fine.
Well, quickly on that point, while you just mentioned Target, because Justin just made a comment, and I do remember seeing a statement from them as well. Target actually did put out a statement that they're going to supply, they're going to give supplies to the neighborhood where it's going on, and people that were affected by, the store being looted and there not being supplies there. So as like with some of these businesses coming out, some of them let the businesses speak for themselves. And to Jesse's point, they're insured. Like
they're going to be okay.
They're going to be fine, and you can't. There's no compromise, or I can't think of the right word I'm trying to think of, but for life over material. Like you can replace
substitute.
Yeah, you can't substitute someone's life over Target or AutoZone, or Wendy's, or they're going to come back. Yeah. They're insured. That they got to replace some windows. Cool, they're going to get a paycheck. And to mention, most of these places have been banking millions and millions. They've got money.
And just to go off of that, I think that's cool because we've not seen that before with an instance like this.
Right.
And I don't know I don't know if that's because I feel like Corona has kind of made us a more tight-knit community, and we've seen a lot of philanthropy, for a lack of a better word, and generosity during this time. Maybe that's kind of extended, now that we're beginning to open up a little bit. But to see a business that was set on fire come out and say, no, we got you, we understand, and on top of that, outside of just words of support, we're going to give you to the community. I think that speaks volumes to the fact that the change is happening.
For reference on that, because we might not know in our time frame, but have you in your lifetime seen anything like that, where after a riot or something like that, where places have come out in support to that level, to like the substantial level of like a corporation or something?
No, I haven't, and that's what I was saying. I think this feels different. And people that have been silent are actually joining the cause and saying, hey, we gotta stop this. We can't let this happen in America or go on.
Yeah.
I don't condone violence. I saw a post that was interesting, that a person that I know, a couple of them, anyway, I don't want to call them out, but they posted Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
And said this is a peaceful march. And then
I got this too.
I saw another post, which is an African American post, showed the same post, and then 5 minutes later they showed the dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see this?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like back to Jesse, what he was saying. I forgot the point I was going to make, but
people write the narrative to fit their story.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
I have never condoned violence up until what I saw Monday night.
Right.
My first impression was, man, this is it. I was raged. So I get the looting. I really do understand why you're doing it, because you're just helpless.
Yep.
When a guy can sit on a guy's neck, look at a camera and just take his breath away and don't care. I'm wondering, well, I knew Minneapolis had a problem.
Mm-hmm.
What about Indianapolis? I know they have a problem. What about the city of Boston?
How much is not caught on video?
It's not caught. So I get it.
Yep.
But America, I'm just hoping now that it's so raw that community leaders are starting to get a better feel for it. I'm hoping that they can start guiding and working with mayors and the governors and to make it more peaceful. But hey, I get it.
Yeah. We don't have this blew up so much because of the video.
Yeah.
This happens more often than George.
Oh yeah.
This happens more often. There's issues far outside of a one.
Yeah.
These get the tread and get the backing because of there's no denying it. There's no denying the evidence. You can't
this one.
you can't backtrack the video.
Well, and this was problem number 19 on his rap sheet.
Right.
If any of the further 18 had been caught on camera, who's to say this doesn't happen years ago?
Yeah.
So to your point, I mean, do you feel like this has? Do you think this is kind of taken off more and more quickly and stuff? Previous riots under this.
This feels different, but I'm nervous about just who's going to cities now, and then what groups are going in, and I don't want to continually see the looting. I'm hoping it starts getting less and less.
So I think with that, a couple things. One, like with you saying, you hope it stops. Well, Columbus just announced today. Governor DeWine announced that Columbus is instituting a curfew from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. starting tonight. National Guard is going in.
Yeah.
They're not stopping protesting.
Yeah.
Protest until 10 p.m. But if you're out after 10, you're subject to arrest. And I want to get to you here too, Chris, and ask your viewpoint on this. One more thing is just, to your point, I don't condone it. I don't condone fixing violence with violence. I don't think that it necessarily writes the right narrative for the story. I think it can be distracting against what the ultimate issue at hand is. I don't want to go down conspiracy theories or what might be and what might not be, but I mean, you did hint at something as far as people coming into these towns and create. There's a lot going around online and about or other people starting these riots to kind of distract away, and it's very possible. And I think in every group, there's going to be that bad seed. I watched today on the Akron one. Me and Jesse were talking about it. There was one guy at the Akron protest day where you could just tell
he was up to no
he
good.
was trying to fuel the fire.
Yeah, and that's where I would like a protester to pull that person.
And they did. They did a good job of diffusing.
Yeah, you get between that cop, get that person, and get them out.
So the guy there was one gentleman that somehow organized. I don't know if maybe he had a group online, but he was like the organizer.
Yeah,
and he refused to give the guy the mic. They had a megaphone thing, and this guy kept pushing. And he was just because he knew.
Yeah.
So we can kind of find that balance, but like I said, with the peaceful protest, it's got to be more than just one. We need to continue further past just it being one day, because you can kind of see the frustration in these. Watching the Columbus one, watching Akron today, you can only stand there face to face staring at each other for so long
before something goes.
And it's kind of like it's kind of like everyone goes in knowing we're just waiting for that flip to that switch to flip for it to escalate to the next point, because then it kind of it solidifies the protest, or it gains traction, or then it's really viewed, because just standing there saying Black Lives Matter or no justice, no peace is good. We're out showing support for it, but what change does it bring? And to this point, I think, like you said, with this one being different, is that people are just past it and they're fed up, and peace has been done. Colin is the best example of it. He is the best example of, I'm going to use my platform for good. I'm going to take a stand figuratively, or take a kneel in this case, to stand up for the fact that there's police brutality. And the man was attacked. He was basically disowned. Everything he did was just you're for the wrong.
Never played in the NFL again.
Yeah, never played.
And there's far worse quarterbacks that were starters in the NFL.
So we can't do it this way, and we can't do it that way. Or when you do it like this, you're disrespecting it. Look, we're in a place right now where it's time for people to be uncomfortable, where we need to get outside of the I'm so concerned about hurting someone's feelings, because it's not working other ways. And I'm all for I think we're in the society today. Everything has to be so politically correct, and you're going to hurt that person's feelings. And if you say it that way, then you can't say that. Well, you know what? It's time.
And I think a
It's
lot of
time
that,
for change.
a lot of that comes from assumptions and stuff about the other side as well. Like, I mean, how many people out there that are standing there going, "Well, I stand with George Floyd," and they assume how black people feel about this.
Right.
During these protests, how many people are going around talking to each other?
Right.
Tomorrow we're going to go there. I challenge, us. I challenge anybody else that's going there. Talk to some people that are there. Learn the other side. If you're not somebody that's experienced with another form of life around you, you know what I mean? Like if you're poor, talk to somebody rich. If you're rich, talk to somebody poor. If you're white, talk to a black person. I mean, start to congregate and create the unity. People love to post that meme of the black hand and the white hand that says, this is what the government fears or whatever. Yeah. But that's not.
Is it being done though?
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Doing it. Yeah, I know.
Stand together and actually create that bond and learn something while you're doing this. Don't just show up and say his name, George Floyd, and Black Lives Matter and hands up, don't shoot, and do all the cliche chants because ultimately that doesn't do anything.
Let's see that image of that. Rather than a group of people walking in circles, where's the picture of everyone standing hand in hand in a peaceful protest, showing support?
Yeah. Gain some understanding through this process.
I have seen some cool stuff like that though, like the one police officer that was like separated from his group, and it was a group of African American and white standing arm in arm to like protect him. That's what we need pictures.
That's what we need pictures. Like we need not the loot. Yeah, and we do know it's there, but like you said, there's a lot of good that's not being shown.
Yeah, we're seeing all the videos of the people like out angry.
Yeah,
but like I think that is a very powerful point. Like literally, like let's literalize the meme of the hand in hand. I know, like right now, people are worried about COVID. Go down a whole other street.
Bring some sanitizer.
Wear some gloves or whatever, and hold hands with your brothers and your sisters, and show support peacefully. And draw attention the right way, Christopher.
Man, you guys hit on like every point.
I know, but I know I want you to give your opinion because I know we've talked about this.
It's like the three best rock bands playing first, and then they ask you to come right out. My man over here brought up Martin Luther King, and this is a pioneer that I admire endlessly. The thing about King, and a lot of people are bringing him up recently, a lot of skeptics are, they're using him to say he was, a provider of peace, and his message was of peace constantly and all that. And that's fine and everything. And King, he accomplished a lot in his time. The one thing he did not accomplish, though, was equality, and that's something that still lingers 60 years after his death. So the thing is, we've already proven peace doesn't work. We've proven it with Kaepernick, as you said. We've proven it, sidewalks, all that. I think awareness is a big key in this fight. Awareness for people who want to ignore the problem. Now, I hear a lot about, material things being crashed and destroyed and all that stuff, and how people are angered at destruction of property. My honest opinion on that isn't so much the property itself. It's the fact that it's in the news. It's in your face. It's all the time. This happened today in Minneapolis. This happened in Cleveland and all that. I think the reason why people appreciate peaceful protest, the skeptics appreciate it more, is because it's out of their way. They can ignore it. It's easy. It's on the sidewalk. They can drive by, and they don't even have to pay 2 cents of worth to it.
Good point.
So my opinion is that awareness, at least for us, is the key. Like you said, we have to talk with others, points that we've never embraced before. I think that falls back on everybody. I'm all about equality, but I always feel like I can learn more, even right now. As far as other instances go, we touched on the media a little bit. I think the media has a responsibility to show both sides of the story. I think, we're seeing all the bad stuff. We're seeing the carnage. We're seeing the devastation play out before our very eyes. But we need more of those pictures. We need more of the unity. We need to show that there is a light at the end of this tunnel, and there could be great things if we all got together on one side. Yep. And then I feel like, as I've discussed with you endlessly, I feel like it's an internal problem too. I feel like that's where the good cops are our greatest ally, and they're the ones that have to step up and say enough is enough. And I'm tired of going through this every week. And it's the skeptics, once again, to go back to them, they're the ones that should be the angriest in all this, because they're going through something that annoys them constantly. They're dealing, they're having to deal with this rioting and this protesting and all that. Okay, fine. Stop it. Put your money where your mouth is and get out there and do it.
For sure.
If you don't want to see it ever again, let's all live equally, and then we won't ever have to have them again. Wouldn't that be great?
Mm-hmm. you made a really good point with the it's not convenient. Like, they can't just drive down the street and go to work, or they can't, and that's the point of where I was kind of saying earlier about where we need to get to the point where we're not so concerned about offending someone or making them uncomfortable, because it's so easy when it's a peaceful protest, to your point, Chris, for people to turn a blind eye and for them to not be affected by it. And this is something that should affect everyone.
Yeah.
Because you know what, as the human race, we need to come together as a people to enact the change, and it's so much the turning a blind eye has got to stop. So if it takes maybe not the rioting, or not the rioting, maybe not the looting part. Okay, you can still enact an uncomfortable, putting people out of their element protest, riot, and still create the same sense of uncomfortability to the point where they can't just look away. You don't have to break the windows of the stores and burn the stores down.
Sure.
But you can sit out in the street.
Yeah.
You can create an issue with traffic. I mean, don't be a dick. Don't be like, I've seen videos of people like smashing people's windows in their cars while they're driving. But like, we still, because then at that point, now you're just doing the same thing that you're protesting.
You're killing the message at that point.
We need to get it to the point where, to Chris's point, is that people are so uncomfortable with it that they're forced to make change or to act that they don't want to deal with it anymore.
And that's the thing, is most people's favorite icons were people that made things uncomfortable. People always love to look at Martin Luther King. And they say he was peaceful. He led marches of thousands of people that went through the streets and blocked traffic and things. You look at Rosa Parks. What she did seems like, doesn't inconvenience anybody that much, but that held up that bus and caused a huge thing because she wouldn't get up.
And that's the thing, it's inconvenient.
Well, Jesus talked against the religious leaders of the time and caused problems and drove people out of a church with a whip. I mean, peace isn't always the answer, and peace is not always sitting there quietly and just showing your numbers.
Right.
That's not what peace is.
And that's why I think the Kaepernick point is a great one and a very valid one, because had he just quit the NFL and had he just, donated his money like he did to, charities and everything else, to youth groups, nobody would have cared twice about it. But because now all of a sudden it's on the eye of the camera, because now all of a sudden we can see it front and center, it interrupts our football game and all that. Right. Now we're going to raise a narrative.
Well, nobody cared about him until they put him on camera.
Exactly. And that's my point. So it gets in the way of them. So this is where the rioting and the looting comes into form. People don't want that because they can't ignore that. That's everywhere. It's on every station. It's on every street corner, and it's too close to home and too close to reality for them.
And tied with that is to Derek's point about, I want to bring up the image going around about Martin Luther King. So everyone loves to share Martin Luther King at the podium, doing his "I Had a Dream" speech and the suit and tie, tuxedo in the street. But to that narrative, he tried peaceful, and look what happened. It didn't do anything. They were beaten. They were attacked by dogs. When you try that, all it does is give the people in power still have the power. So he had the numbers, and he set out to do the right thing. Where did it get him?
They probably would keep it peaceful. Excuse my language. If you motherfuckers would listen for once.
Right. And so at the end of the day, again, I don't think, you've heard all of our viewpoints. We don't necessarily condone, but understand. People are angry. Something's got to happen. So I think with that is moving forward. What do we do? And I think we need to, as individuals, come to terms with there needs to be change and to take on the responsibility to figure out what that is. I think that it's exhausting, and Derek, please, no offense to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that as whites, it's exhausting for us to turn to African Americans and say, what can we do? They've tried everything. We need to come up with a solution because we are at the root of the problem. We are the ones creating the issue. Not all of us individually, obviously, but the racial issue is starting on our end. We need to be the ones that are putting forth effort together collectively, but we need to stop looking to the ones that are being oppressed to ask for what we should do to fix it. We need to fix it. So what is that? And I think that's where we're at right now with what is the next step. Where do we go from tomorrow at Hardesty Park, tonight in Columbus, today in Cleveland, downtown Akron, and having these protests, whether it's rioting and looting or peaceful? What is the next step? What are we going to do next weekend and the weekend after that until something changes? Come November, getting out to the polls and voting. I don't know, honestly, in this situation, what voting will change other than which we'll get to at a much higher level.
Yeah.
But locally, I don't know, can you vote out your police captain, because they're not holding the police liable? I don't know. Like, I think that as we need to come together, and maybe that's something like even tomorrow that we force to be talked about. What are we going to do? What is your guys' opinions on what we do to enact change? What is the next step after protest? How do we hold the police accountable? I posted a status with scripting and police and numbers at the police department to call about reaching out to our police department, and you can use the script. You cannot use the script. You can like the format and use it if you live in California or if you live in Michigan, wherever you live, that basically just says, I'm reaching out to you as my police department. In light of recent events with George, I want to know what you're doing. What conversations are you having with your officers? What further training are you having? What are you doing to prevent this from happening here, wherever that might be? There's a list of phone numbers, community outreach, the police chief. I think that that's a start. I think that we need to make it known, flood them with, we're not going to continue to stand for this. You can write to Governor DeWine. You could take that script and you could print it out and mail it in to the Attorney General or whoever. But what else do we do?
I honestly think it kind of falls back on what you said a little earlier, in terms of, something will happen, we'll have a couple of protests, and then we'll forget about it. I honestly think that, for lack of a better word, that constant annoyance in the ones that are skeptical about it, it has to keep poking. We have to keep poking and prodding. If you're the manager of a restaurant, we'll say, and this is a terrible metaphor, but you're a manager of a restaurant, and you have an employee who is a terrible waiter underneath you, and you have to watch him and make sure that he does good. Are you just gonna talk to him once and then let him go? After that, it's he's on his own, whatever.
Right.
No, you're gonna keep an eye on him, and you're gonna keep poking, and you're gonna keep prodding, making sure that he gets better and better. I kind of think that's what we have to do as citizens.
I agree. That's what I was saying. Like, maybe every day isn't feasible.
No,
but whether maybe it's once a week, we make a call or write a letter.
And there's so many people. It doesn't have to be
it.
just the same 10 people.
Well, and here's the thing to that point too, which I want to hit on is, okay, tomorrow, the Hardesty Park thing as example. There's a Facebook group. I know not everybody uses Facebook, but right now there's like an RSVP of like 800 people. I alone on my Facebook have got 5,000 friends. And I see a great majority of them typing away, posting how outraged they are. Well, if all 5,000 of them came tomorrow, that'd be a big difference than 800.
Yeah.
The city of Akron, I don't even know how many freaking people live here. But if you're as outraged as you're making yourself look like as a social media warrior, you got to get off the computer and you got to get out and you got to do something. It's Sunday. I don't care if it's the lamest excuse and you just need something to do. It's Sunday. Social distancing is still happening. There's not really anything to do. A lot of people don't work Sunday. Hardesty Park, 5 p.m., show up and do something other than just typing away. Put your actions out there. Words fall on deaf ears, So to Chris's point, to Jesse's point, we need to move forward, and we can't just let it go by the wayside. We can't get distracted a week from now when there's a COVID breakout and that's all we're talking about. Or we go to war with someone in the Middle East and now we're distracted by that. It has to be consistent. Jesse, Derek, thoughts?
Excuse me, my voice there, but I know Obama had a task force for the police departments, and where they would get the records, or they look in and see, well, we have a situation where the numbers are showing this is going on.
Yep, like a review board or something, right?
Yeah, and they had sent out a lot of diversity training to the cops, and Barr came in, Attorney General, and ripped it up.
Yeah. Oh.
So I would like to, we always, when an officer does something, then you get his record.
Yeah.
I would like to see those documents. Like, hey, look, and restart that. Why has a cop got 19 infractions? Make it public.
Yep. I think it'd be like a 3 strikes and you're out.
Yeah, or just accountability. Right. I'd like to see that. And then I think just doing this and having other people other than African Americans leading the protests, that's how you start.
Yeah.
Democracy is with people.
Yep.
It's not the government. If we just get united, I think you can. And I do see that. I see that this is different. And I don't, like you said, it can't go away. So, it only happened Monday. So,
but we got to keep it going.
Got to keep it going. Definitely have to keep it going. And like you said, next distraction where we get distracted, and time will tell.
But we got to hold ourselves accountable. The 4 of us in this room need to hold ourselves accountable. Yeah. You work with Jesse.
Yeah.
You say, hey, Jesse, it's been a week since we talked about it. What do we do in this week? Or what are we going to do next week? When we're on the show, we see each other every Saturday. Hey, what's our plan going forward? I do like your comment about the review board. I did see somebody else comment about bringing that back. I think that's important. I think it's the same as anybody else. I mean, at jobs you get annual reviews or quarterly reviews.
Yeah.
If you do a quarterly review with an officer and you find out over the last 3 months he had a dozen complaints, disciplinary action, further training, something happens.
And that's where voting comes in, because look, if the current administration won't do that, then we get you out of there and we find a new administration that will.
At the protest today, and I don't know if this is even feasible, I don't know how reliant they are, but one of the people at the Akron protest today said something about we can't, and Chris kind of said it earlier, we can't weed out racism as a community or as a society
on a world.
But in the office you can. And so one of the guys had said something about everyone hired into the academy, and maybe a yearly or whatever, but before you're hired is they take a polygraph, and if you fall within a realm of some sort of racial bias, you can get hired. You're out. There's no, if you are in a position of power where you have the ability to dictate someone's rights, you sure as hell don't have a place if you're against human rights.
Good idea.
So again, I don't know if a polygraph works, but I gotta imagine there's some for the government. I mean, the military can look at you and tell if you're lying. Like, those fuckers are crazy. And
I know.
You got these Green Berets out here who stare at you and say, okay, you're dead. So there's something out there that we can implement within the police academy or something, and it can be like a graph, like a green, yellow, red type thing. And if you answer so many questions and you fall within this needle run, that you just don't get hired because you don't deserve it. And some people might be upset about that, and I have the right to be a cop. Well, you don't if you're in a place where you're going to hold someone accountable for something in an unruly manner. You don't have that right then. Because you know what? You're taking away someone else's rights, so why do you have the right to be a cop?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that somehow, I don't know how, maybe it's a change.org or a petition, and we ask for certain things to be put into place. I know, and it's probably public knowledge. I don't know if you guys know. Is it public knowledge that you can look up like Akron Police Department records and see, okay, Officer XYZ had these complaints against them this year, or within the Akron Police Department there were so many people shot and killed or arrested? Like, is that public knowledge? Do you know?
I think you can look up stuff like shot and killed records, but I don't know if personal disciplinary
maybe not
action
names
stuff is
directly, but
available.
I think that that's something as a government agency that I would think, I mean, we fund it. I would think that we would have the ability, or should have the ability, to see public record, to kind of like your point, where they would reach out into this review board and say, hey, Akron Police Department
is 32% higher in these issues or something. Yeah.
I feel like that's something as a people that we should have the ability to see, and if not, we should enact it, and that it's something that should be reviewed and said, hey, there's something going on at this department. What do we do?
And yes, you can seek them out under the Public Records Act. You have to go directly to the police department and seek them out yourself.
Of course.
So,
But I mean,
make it difficult.
Okay, they make it difficult, but it is available. So just something to keep in mind, that we can try ourselves to hold them accountable, because I know, I mentioned earlier that we as people have so much of a voice, but the people in power really have to hold themselves accountable for anything to happen. So I mean, we have some sort of accountability where we can pull this record and review it, whatever it is, whatever group or an organization does it, but to hold these places accountable, and really enact that, because I really think the polygraph thing could be
interesting.
Could be a big deal.
That is interesting.
Because again, I just don't think you have that right. And getting into higher ups, there's an issue.
Yeah.
Like this country we should not be having these problems.
Not in 2020.
Not 2020.
Yeah.
This is 2020.
Yeah,
That's too damn late,
just,
man.
Yeah.
How do we?
It's too late in the day for the bullshit.
Crazy.
Yeah.
To me, that this is still a thing, and I'm young and I haven't seen that much. I'm not young, but I mean, the amount of stuff I've seen and this continue to go on long after where it should have stopped. When is the time? When are people going to open their eyes? And the painting the narrative to fit your agenda has got to stop. We're going to be against Colin Kaepernick because he's doing it during the national anthem, and you're disrespecting the military.
Mm-hmm.
He's not coming out and saying fuck the military or fuck America.
No.
He made that clear from day one.
And he consulted with someone in the military.
Yeah.
We got to stop. We got to start putting our focus on the issue and not the way that we're bringing light to it. He didn't do anything violent. He wasn't harming anybody.
Mm-hmm.
We ask for peaceful, and we ask for these musicians or athletes to use their platform for change.
It kills me when LeBron makes a quote and then people just eat it.
I know.
But just rip him. And it's like,
yeah.
okay, so he can't speak out,
Right.
Kaepernick can't take a knee.
Yes.
Well,
if it's against
if
if it's against their narrative, they say go back and shoot a basketball, LeBron.
Yeah. Just shut up and shoot.
Yeah.
Shut up and shoot. Yeah.
And that's one thing I was going to kind of touch on, because you guys joke that I'm the religious one of the podcast, but
well,
I mean I am, but
there's kind of no debate there.
Right.
But one thing that I consistently see, and just like the cops and the protesters and everything else, this isn't everybody in the category, but a large amount of issues that I see are with people that I know who are part of the church, who either don't say anything or they defend politics before they defend what we believe in.
Yes.
And the church is the biggest movement in the entire world. Depending, it doesn't matter what your religion is, your religion speaks peace and love and understanding, whether that's your Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
I challenge the church and the people who I know who believe the things that I do to start practicing what they preach, because there is nothing about race in the Bible. It talks about love your neighbor. It talks about challenging, the wrong things that are there. I said earlier, Jesus challenged the people that taught the religious, doctrine. Go out there and meet somebody. Extend a hand. And don't do it in a way of, I grew up in the church. I grew up in going door to door and passively inviting people and not really having any meaning or stuff behind it. And I've also been to churches where there's been great diversity economically, racially, whatever, and it's been a family atmosphere and they were great. There's plenty of churches that are around there. My childhood church is right down the road from Hardesty Park, where the protest will be tomorrow. I know a lot of people that should be there. I know a lot of people that should be practicing what they preach. I know a lot of change can come from numbers.
Yep.
If you're part of the church and you believe these things, you should be one of the people out in those streets.
Yep.
You should be one of the people who are trying to enact change. And that's not getting political or religious. That's just calling you out on your own stuff. I'm practicing what I preach being there tomorrow, and you damn well better be as well.
I can't applaud the point anymore. I mean, if you are truly religious within the church, it's for human rights.
Yep.
That is for love thy neighbor. I don't know the 10 commandments or whatever, but you should be there. I mean, you should be there. You should be there to support your brothers and sisters. The human race. Why? Why not be there?
A lot of times religion and politics have been intertwined, and it's seen as if one side is more religious than the other, but
this isn't about politics.
there is no
It's about
politics
people.
within it.
This is about people. This has nothing to do with, there's not a protest tomorrow to say that we're going out to protest Trump. We're not, this isn't a protest to go out and say, we're trying to tear down the Akron Police Department. This is about a human being. Yep. And that's it. There's nothing more to it than that. I mean, other than obviously we want change, but we're not protesting like a political agenda here, So there's no reason the church should have any issue with promoting that or calling on their people to be there. Discussing it in church. I don't know. Is that a thing that gets brought up in church? I'm not being ignorant, but like on a Sunday, and something like this happens. Okay, so this happened Monday. So this Sunday in church, is that something where it would get talked about with the people?
Just depends on your church. I've been in churches
like
where
it
it
should
would
be.
be, and I've been in churches where it would be brushed under the rug.
That's an issue, especially
Yeah.
within I would think, again, I don't go to church, and I don't say that I'm like super religious, but I would think that that's something that you would talk about. You know,
It's a
what's going
current
on in your
event.
community?
Yeah.
You know, like, what are we going to do as a people? Like, coming together.
Yeah.
You know, taking, what is it when they send the bowl around?
Donation?
Offering?
Yeah, no,
Tithe?
not where they're giving out not where you go up front, but like where they like collection bowl.
Yeah,
Donation,
that's offering.
yeah.
Oh, that's called the. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Sorry.
You're thinking
wanna-
communion is what you
Yeah,
thought I was
I want
talking
to
Yeah.
reiterate that Jesse's the religious one.
But no, but like, I mean, doing like an offering and like coming together for the families affected. Like, I would think I went to PSR, Parish School of Religion. I went to like a church school on Monday nights and stuff, and like we talked about that stuff, you know, and we would enact change. Like, I feel like that's a great platform to not make political, but it's an opportunity. And Jesse, I mean, with being in that, being involved in that, I think that's something that you could probably not be responsible for, but bring up as a point. Like you've already said, like,
So many people are fighting right now to get their churches opened because of Corona and everything. They're fighting tooth and nail. The church is not a building. The church is a people, and you have a chance to go out and extend and grow that church by showing love in a time when love is needed. And that's what should be happening right now. Go and make the church in the streets during that protest. Forget the
Absolutely.
building.
I don't think I could say it better than that. It's a great point. you know?
Transition.
So, but yeah, I mean, we're gonna again said it a million times, but 5 o'clock tomorrow, Hardesty Park, be there. If you're online and you're as upset as we are or hurt like so many people are, and you truly want to see change, get out from behind your computer, get out of your comfort zone. You can wear a mask, you know, do what you need to do to feel comfortable, but come out and show your support. The greater the number, the better. You know, it makes these people feel that they're not alone, you know, that George Floyd's death wasn't in vain, you know, that we're going to do something to change it. And we're not going to continue to let it happen. I know we wanted to talk about one other thing regarding, and I've kind of hinted at it a couple times throughout, with voting and that making a change, and race not having any place in politics or in places of power. And I know Jesse feels very strongly about this next topic, so I'm going to let him discuss it. It's regarding POTUS, President Donald Trump, and his most recent foot in his mouth. The man just doesn't know when to shut up or stop typing. Jesse Young?
I'm trying to pull up his tweets.
Bring it, Jesse.
I'll keep bantering. You know that he has an issue with trying to be the best, or I've got the greatest this, and riots were going on in D.C., and he went and hid in his big castle there on Washington Boulevard, and I think that's what it is, 1600 Washington or something like that. Anyways, but I think it was yesterday he got on his Twitter rant. He loves to tweet, and posted something pretty ignorant, and we need to talk about. While Jesse's getting that, that's another thing I want to talk about.
He tweets so much.
No, it's all good. That's it. But it brings me to another point that I want to talk about while you're finding it is, okay, so come November's voting, where we can enact actual change. On a tangent off of that, come November, we get to vote for Joe Biden or Donald Trump. Joe Biden or Donald Trump are the two best candidates that we have brought to the table to run this country. There's a problem with that.
Don't blame me. I tried to give you guys that.
I ain't blaming no one directly, but like institutional issues, like things that have not changed in a long time. Is it the Senate or the House that can never be elected out? Like they're for life? Senate. Like, how could you be sitting in the Senate office forever and never get? We need to be able to turn over that. I don't know how you fix that, because I don't know if that's constitutional or if that's just law. I don't know how that one works, but it's besides the point.
The Constitution is full of amendments, and the definition of amendment is change.
So
So people have this idea that the Constitution is this solid thing. We as the people have the power in this country, and people forget that.
Yep.
You have the right to vote for any change that you want. You don't want free speech anymore, and this is an extreme example. This would never happen. But if we decided today we wanted to be a dictatorship
put it on a
and
ballot,
get rid
right?
of everything, we can vote for that because we're Americans, and
Yeah.
damn it, we can change whatever we want to change.
So to that point, like the Senate, there needs to be turnover in everything. You can't have something stagnant for too long. Like, I think Supreme Justice is the same thing. It's for life. Until you leave, you can sit for life as a Supreme Court justice. So point being is, look, this country is full of extremely intelligent, business savvy, non-racist, non-sexist people. You got to tell me that there is a better candidate than Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Now, I know we're going to be stuck with one of them for the next 4 years, but please, God, whoever, prepare the next 4 years to freaking run in office so we can have a better option than these two buffoons, because it's just not okay. We're losing the battle regardless. This is a vote for the better of the two losers at this point, but that's just my own political point. I should probably hit the disclaimer button. But anyways, I think at this point I've rambled enough. I've dug myself a big enough hole for Jesse to find the tweet that we were trying to get to. So
the day that everything happened, it might have been the day after, actually.
I think it was
I think it was the day after. All of this happens. George Floyd's video goes out. The rioting begins down in Minneapolis, starts with protesting, and it escalates. People are pissed. Everybody's talking about it. Celebrities have come out. LeBron James has come out. Millions upon millions of people have come out and said things about this. I went to look to see if Trump had said anything. He doesn't say a thing. Doesn't post about it. Doesn't say this was a tragedy. He doesn't say, this is a sad thing. Even with Arbery, he kind of came out and said it was a tragedy, but there wasn't even that. There wasn't even a this is a tragedy, but. Hours later, he comes out after Minneapolis has now been set ablaze, and he tweets this message. Remember, he hasn't said anything about condolences or sadness or tragedy. I can't stand back and watch this happen to the great American city, Minneapolis. A total lack of leadership. Either the very weak radical left mayor, Jacob Frey, get his act together and bring the city under control, or I will send in the National Guard and get the job done right. So immediately he starts off his first tweet attacking the left, making it about himself, making it about politics, and talking about how the Democrats are weak. He then continues. He says, these thugs, in all capital letters, are dishonoring the memory of George Floyd, and I won't let that happen. Just spoke to Governor Tim Walz and told him that the military is with him all the way. Any difficulty, and we will assume control, but when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Thank you.
Dishonoring the memory, like, the one you ignored.
Which was quoted, by the way, in like 1960 something, by that looting and shooting quote was from like some racist like douchebag.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, he stole that directly from like somebody else.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Miami chief of police, I believe.
Yeah. So,
Or Tallahassee.
but the first time he mentions George Floyd's name is talking about these thugs, and which is a perfect example of something I forgot to mention earlier when we were talking about profiling and the ability to not peacefully protest was with COVID and the armed, fully like fatigued out, bulletproof vests dudes that were protesting because their barbershop was closed.
Mm-hmm.
There was no SWAT team. There was no tear gas. We weren't out there like on edge that these armed men that were standing at the courthouse were going to attack people. But then the second that there's a protest about the death of someone, we want to be out there freaking shooting tear gas canisters and come on, man. That's the perfect example. That's just one example of the difference in how we treat the race different when it comes to the narrative that fits what they want. Mm-hmm. In Trump, in that quote, calls them thugs.
Well,
but then the other one, the other one when he was talking about them was like
fine people.
Yeah, these fine people just want to get back to work, and I'm like, give me a fucking break.
Yeah, and that's the thing is people always try to say, they ask for proof that Trump is racist. There's no proof. He's not going around, using the N-word, so he must not be racist.
That's just the ignorant comment of everyone that tries to defend the cops not being racist.
This is the type of thing that he loves to do. Thug is synonymously used for black people.
Mm-hmm.
Young black men
Phil Jackson,
are typically used as thugs. It's just like saying, well, he's not going around calling people. It's like redneck. Redneck, I'm not talking about Seeden. If I say somebody in this room's a redneck, we know it's not one of the three.
The one thing about Trump is he is ignorant, but he's not stupid. He knows exactly what he's not going to put himself out there where we can pigeonhole him and say, look, you said this, you're a fucking racist. But he's hinting at, we're not stupid. But we're not any stupider than him.
But it's enough of an edge that his supporters go, yeah, I know what he's talking about.
Exactly. He knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah.
So he follows it up. The next day, protesting happened at the White House, happened again today. Again, an opportunity to say something about this, to say about the tragedy, to say we need police reform, to say that we have a problem in America. Any amount of time at this point to say something that could help the situation.
Human empathy.
Instead, he follows it up with this. I woke up this morning to see this. At 8:41, these are his thoughts. Great job last night at the White House by the U.S. Secret Service. They were not only totally professional, but very cool. I was inside, watched every move, and couldn't have felt more safe. They let the protesters, in quotation marks, scream and rant as much as they wanted. Right there, problem number one. You're talking about people's First Amendment rights. They're talking about an issue that is dear to their heart, an issue that's in America, and he's equated this to screaming and ranting as if they're children having a tantrum.
Well, that and the they let them, which I really respected Mayor Horrington about, is he said, I didn't give you the space. He knows that we have the right to be there,
Right.
and that it is our space. Trump didn't let them do anything. They have the right to be there and to protest.
Same with DeWine. He said it's all necessary and it's all fine with him.
So moving forward, he says, but when someone got too frisky or out of line, they would quickly come down on them hard. Didn't know what hit them. The front line was replaced with fresh agents like magic. Big crowd, professionally organized, but nobody came close to breaching the fence. If they had, they would have been greeted with the most vicious dogs, the most ominous weapons I have ever seen. That's when people would have been really badly hurt at least. Many Secret Service agents just waiting for action. We put the young ones on the front line, sir. They love it. And good practice, in quotation marks. As you saw last night, they were very cool and very professional. Never let it get out of hand. Thank you. On the bad side, the D.C. mayor, Muriel Bowser, who was also looking for money and help, wouldn't let the D.C. police get involved. Not their job. Quotations. Nice. So you've got a guy who's talking about, has not addressed this issue, has now said that he's letting people protest, but instead of protest, he calls it screaming and ranting as if they're ignorant, and says that had they breached the wall, they would have been met with dogs, which we talked earlier about Dr. King and those times when they let dogs loose on.
Yep, that's true.
I mean, there's equivalence there. And ominous weapons.
That's
the word ominous.
That's
so ignorant.
It's just ominous has this connotation to it. I'm an English teacher, so words to me matter more than other people. Some people say, "Oh, he's just talking," but to me, I look at what people are saying.
Yeah.
To me, an ominous situation, it shows its danger before it comes.
Mm-hmm.
You avoid ominous situations.
Eerie.
It's the dark path that you see down the way that you avoid out of fear. These aren't just things. These weren't precautions.
Right.
These weren't things that we would use in response to an issue.
Right.
These were ominous weapons that were waiting in.
Yeah, like almost hoping for it to happen.
It's the monster that waits for you.
Yeah.
That's what ominous is. Ominous is not your dad's gun if someone breaks in the house. Ominous is the boogeyman that's in your closet at night that's going to get you.
Yeah.
And they were waiting for these people to cross the line. They were daring. They were Secret Service that he said were ready and waiting for action.
young ones just hoping for it.
Somebody got their word calendar
It was
today.
good practice.
Right.
This is a man who is now threatened that if there is looting, we will shoot you, American citizens, and has now admitted to the fact that he is waiting for American citizens. Please slip up. Please take it just a bit too far. Because I got people waiting to practice shooting you with these weapons that are ominous and waiting for you in my ultimate power to be used on you because I can. And this is the person that we have in office that is up for re-election that has the support of not the majority of people, but a lot of them.
And what'd you say at the end? Now he's working with King Bowser and taking Princess Toadstool and all that? What was that?
So, yeah, he gave the mayor of D.C. crap because she would not let the police go and intervene.
Oh, I gotcha.
And it's just to let this person that uses this type of language, clearly there's a concept of something is not right here. As a leader, you're meant to diffuse situations. I would have rather he not said anything. He's now invoked this idea that violence is going to be met with our rights as American people. First Amendment rights. The first one that the Founding Fathers came up with. The idea that we can speak freely, write freely, and protest things that we think are wrong. First thing that crossed their mind. And he thinks that that's going to be met with force and that it's practice to do so. Fuck him.
That's why I let Jesse lead the conversation. He's passionate about it and he knows the facts. It's ignorant.
I can't wait till the tell-all book comes out right after he's done with office. Whenever that is, like, I can't wait.
I don't care.
Great.
Our economy, our money in our 401k, our whatever else things you want to say, our stance in the world, whatever, the things that you believe that Trump has done well, fine. None of that equates to the damage that he has done to not only us as a people, racially, just love, hate, whatever. Politically, he's caused a divide, and now he's done this before, but now he's blatantly said, I don't give a damn about the Constitution that you think that I uphold. Mm-hmm. You can't have a person like that in office.
And that's why so many of his supporters supported him originally, too. Because he was so Constitution heavy.
And like I said earlier, we have the right to vote for whatever we want.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be clear cut in your face. You got to read between the lines. You see a person attacking your rights like this. You see a person that attacks races like this and causes these divides. Okay, yeah, he hasn't come out and said, oh, yeah, the N-words are at it again. And he hasn't come out and said, well, I don't really like free speech. You got to be smarter than that. If you can't read between the lines and make the voting happen, you're going to vote somebody in that you don't want. And you're going to vote in a situation of a dictatorship. And it ain't going to be clear cut. And when it smacks you in the face, you're going to be looking back going, well, what the hell happened? I'm telling you right now.
Ignorance. The problem is ignorance. People want to believe what it fits their agenda. That's the problem with a lot of what's going on now is people refuse to see what the issue at hand is, and they want to turn a blind eye to it and point it in a different direction. To follow that up with this lovely quote from Trump, we've got a couple quotes from some previous presidents who said things a little bit better, and one quote from Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King stated, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." Which is very fitting for right now. I think that if we don't all come together to protest and show outrage for the loss of another human being's life at the hands of someone that is there to protect them, we're all complicit. If we're not willing to step forward and show our empathy and show support that we're not okay with this action, silence is complicit at this point to me. My opinion, but I believe it to be complicit. I think you need to step up and say something. Whether you believe it's race or not, it doesn't matter. Even if you're naive enough to say it wasn't racist, even if you remove race from the situation, even if George Floyd was a white man, you cannot tell me that action was okay. by someone that is sworn into office to protect you. It's not okay. So we need to come together. JFK, who I really liked, says, those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable, which we've talked about tonight.
That's a good one.
Peaceful protest has happened. Peaceful protest has failed. We have not allowed it. The Martin Luther King example, they peacefully protested and they were attacked for it. The Colin Kaepernick, pushed out of the NFL, shunned, made to be the villain in the situation. He peacefully protested, and you know what? We've had enough. So things aren't so peaceful anymore. Another one JFK said was, a man may die, nations may rise and fall, but an idea lives on. And to that point, like we've lost George Floyd in this situation, but we're all we are coming together as a people to push forward this idea of equality, and people are gonna fall during it, and things are gonna happen. Businesses are burning, nations are falling, but we have to continue to push forward for this change if we truly believe in it and not give up. The last one was from Abraham Lincoln. It says, to sin by silence when they should protest makes cowards of men. Which, before reading that, I kind of insinuated earlier. Silence is complicit. Mm-hmm. If you are not willing to step up for change for your fellow men and women, then you're just as equally a part of the problem. And it doesn't mean you have to, if you fear of putting yourself in harm's way because you don't want to be out in the middle of a protest because you don't, okay, I get it. Not everyone's going to go out and protest and be out, but you've got to do something. You've got to speak up. You've got to vote, write to your law officials, write to the mayor's office or the governor's office. Do something, but don't be silent. You have to say something. Whatever that might be, you've got to speak up. Now more than ever, you have to have your words heard.
You use your excellent speech that you typed up this week on your Facebook page. That's the perfect grounds for calling up a representative or doing whatever. It made so easy.
Yeah, there's a script I can share. I can copy and paste it into here. It's a basic script that's just put together to give you a footing to reach out and have your own voice and to hold people in power accountable, and that could be anyone, and you can utilize it and change the wording for any situation, but we have to be willing to step forward and enact change and do it consistently and not give up when it gets hard, not give up when we get distracted by something else. We have a responsibility to do it, and it's no simpler than that. We're responsible. This is one people together. This looking at each other differently, whether you like or dislike. There's a time and a place, and this is a time to come together. Think about 9/11. I always look at that as an example of how there is the possibility for us to come together as a nation. Mm-hmm. After 9/11, people did not care what race you were, if you were male or female. We came together as one people in solidarity to support each other and, in sadness and anger, whatever it was. It is possible for us to do it. We just have to be willing to do it. And that's where we're at this point. That's where we're, as far as this room goes, a lot of people that we know, we're ready for change. And, we're here to be a part of that. We would love to have insight in the comments. Direct message us, email us. It's madeandmotivatepodcast@gmail.com. Email us if you want something, if you've got something to say or to add, or you've got ideas. Message any of us on our personal Facebooks. Comment. Be a part of the solution.
Come find us at Hardesty Park tomorrow.
Hardesty Park. We're here to listen. We want to be a part of the solution and not the problem. And being silent is a part of the problem. Even if you got to talk in silence, whether it's DM and you don't want to be out on Facebook, whatever, it's fine, but just speak up in some form or fashion. Don't continue to be complicit. Gentlemen, closing thoughts. Derek, anything that one, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insight, different perspective, your stories, anything that you would like to say, whether it be to the audience or share with us, thoughts, closing ideas, things that we can give to the youth to enact change, words of wisdom.
Oh, I don't know about words of wisdom, but I just think just the invitation Jesse asked me, I said, sure, I'll do that.
Yep.
You know, I don't consider myself like a race authority or anything.
Hey, we're just a couple of guys that want to talk about life things.
When you talk things out with the different types of, you know, people or race or whatever you are, that's the beginning. And if you just listen, you know, you don't. Sometimes we just try to win the debate. But like I said, I think this is different. It feels different. I think America is going to, you know, reunite. I believe in Americans, and we're going to get through this and be for the better of it.
Well said.
Yep, appreciate it. Christopher, Jesse?
I'll leave you with words from Gandhi. You must be the change you want to see in the world.
Yep. Very famous quote by Gandhi. Mr. Jesse Young from Sports Illustrated. You're the writer, you are the man of words, you are an English teacher. You do say things very eloquently.
You got it.
What can we leave our audience with outside of, I think, a very good, well-rounded conversation? Words of wisdom, things we can do next steps moving forward, thoughts, prayers.
I've already said, you know, a lot pertaining to things the church can do, things that you can do in your community, things you can do with these protests moving forward. I just would challenge you to get an outside view from the world that you've grown in. I grew up in North Hill of Akron, low income, but I was privileged enough to have a life that I didn't need much, like people that I went to school with. I never had a full understanding until I got a little bit older. I had black friends. I wasn't racist. I'd seen some friends living in poverty, but I didn't understand it. Go and meet those people. Learn about those people. Learn about people that are different from you, whether that's race, whether that's gender, whether that's social or economic status. It doesn't matter.
Sexuality, whatever it might be.
Any of it. And sexuality is a great example because I grew up a bigot. I was homophobic. I've not always been the most accepting person. And it wasn't until I worked with, you know, people in the gay community, it wasn't until I taught kids that were truly dirt poor that I gained perspective of what the rest of this world can go through. And there are people that I still don't have a full understanding to, and I hope to learn about them. And I just challenge people to step out of your bubble, step outside of your work, your church, your local restaurant you go to all the time. Go somewhere else and meet somebody. Go to the protest, meet somebody. Go to a school that your child doesn't go to, that maybe isn't as well off, and help those kids. Do something to broaden your horizon and learn something while giving back to your community. And practice what we like to preach, because so often people do not do that.
Yep. Very well said. I think we'll leave you guys with that for this week's episode. Please listen, share, really think about the message that we're trying to portray. We always do our best to be very open and factual. We try and stray from opinions in this matter. Obviously, there's some opinions on certain dynamics of the situation, but a lot of data to back these things. But get involved in the conversation. Share the feed. Join us tomorrow, please. 5 o'clock, Hardesty Park. There's an event on Facebook, George Floyd Vigil or something, I think it might be called. But either way, you even got to follow the Facebook group. It's at Hardesty Park at 5 p.m. You probably won't going to miss it. There's going to be a lot of people there. Come out and show in peaceful protest and support. You know, we're going to be there. We're going to do a live and try and cover the event and you know, really just be there in support of the situation. So that's all for tonight. And we look forward to talking with you guys tomorrow, hopefully. Come and see us. Say hi. We're going to do our best to have some conversations with people and really ask questions and hopefully enact some kind of change or find a plan to move forward with this as a people. And then we will catch you guys at the next episode on episode 22. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks once again, Derek, for being on the show with us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And as always, Christopher and Jesse, thanks for being here with me tonight. That's all, folks. And please have a safe night.
Podcast. Wow.